Greetings, true believers, and welcome to another edition of the Reality TV RHAPpy Hour. My name is Jordan Parhar, and this week I'm here to talk some Survivor Cambodia with you on RHAPisawebsite.com. Today, I am joined by a person that I have a lot of respect for, somebody who has been killing the podcast game for years. He is a fellow superfan of Survivor and Big Brother. You can also catch his coverage of that, as well as the genius over at the Dom and Colin podcast. It's the great Colin Stone, ladies and gentlemen. Colin, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, JP. It is so great to be here. Big fan of you, big fan of the show. Very excited that you thought of me. And by the way, he's using, whatever he said, whatever nice thing he said about me, about how fantastic of a podcaster I am, is very loosely interpreted.
It is, but seriously though, Colin, you are great, man. Like, honestly, I have been listening to you and Dom. I guess it was maybe it was right around Big Brother 14. I think what really caught my eye was the winner ranks that you guys did, and then there was the whole thing where you talked to Ian, and then I discovered your retrospectives and everything. But before I was ever on Big Brother, I was a huge fan of what you guys did. I probably, in the time from my finals, the time I made finals for Big Brother Canada 2, which was, I guess, in the winter of 2013, to this March 2015, I probably re-listened to all of your retrospectives probably like 3 or 4 times, just because I wanted to get as much information as I could about these games and everything. So first off, I want to thank you for helping me finish 12th place on Big Brother Canada 3.
I'm glad they paid such huge dividends. No, that is cool though. Thank you very much. I think it's awesome just to hear from people who did listen to it and then get on the show. Like Spencer is the only other one, honestly, that I know of who knew about us before he went in. And actually, over the summer, we got a tweet. I'm sure it was from Alex Kildwell or Taryn Armstrong, I bet, that you gave us a shout out on the live feeds. And that was very like a bucket list moment for us.
Yeah, I did. There was a few times when I was in the Big Brother Canada house where I thought, okay, I should give shout outs to people who helped get me here. So I probably shouted out Rob Sesternino 4 or 5 times a day. And then I was told not to do that anymore. And then I shouted you guys out a few times, but I wanted to make sure that I did it multiple times because I figured that the feeds would cut, and ultimately they did, but it did get through once. So I was pretty stoked about that. But enough about Big Brother Canada 3. Colin, let's talk about you for a little bit here before we get into the recap of today's episode. Why don't you just let some of the listeners here know a little bit more about you and what you do in case they don't already listen to the Dom and Colin podcast?
Sure. So the Dom and Colin podcast is me and my friend Dom, as the title suggests. And the two of us basically just get together and talk about the latest Survivor episode. We've done some Big Brother coverage. And as you alluded to, the genius, which I definitely want to plug in a little bit. But so basically, we really focus on the strategy and a lot about the edit and a lot of, honestly, just like complaining about stuff that no one but the two of us really seem to care that much about. But it is a lot of fun. And you can find all of our stuff at domandcolin.com. And if you aren't aware, the interviews that Jordan referenced, what we call our retrospectives, where we sit down with former players and talk to them at in great detail about the time that they spent playing Big Brother, Survivor, whatever. And Jordan, unfortunately, I really wish we could have sat down with you, but we both honestly tuned out of Big Brother Canada or Big BB Can 3 at a certain point, just because as people who really just love the game aspect of it, it really just seemed like a big coin flip at a certain point.
Yeah, and I feel like that season as a whole was not really your cup of tea because you guys are very strategically focused in terms of the game. You don't necessarily we're cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
You don't like all those twists. I was not a fan of those twists. So yeah, I totally understand you and I hear you there. And even if you did watch the entire thing, I don't think that I had enough time in the game for me to be worth doing a retrospective.
I still even have questions for you that I would love to get answered. Maybe later, maybe in a couple hours. We'll see.
Yeah, well, you know what? At the end of this show, what I usually do, we're live on Blab for those of you listening in the audio archives, but normally what I do at the end of this show is I do a RHAPter show, which is not recorded. It just is saved because with how Blab works, you can still talk and be on video and have people calling and stuff after the podcast ends. So after the episode ends, Colin, we'll get into all that if you'd like, if you still have those questions and you're not sick of me by then. And yeah, for future reference for you guys listening to this in the audio, definitely join us. We're usually live on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And we do the RHAPter show every week. It's pretty good. I stay on for usually an extra 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or whatever, sometimes longer, just to talk with you guys and answer some questions that you guys may have. So definitely join us live each and every week. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. And before we hop into the episode this week, I just want to give a huge shout out to Rob and Nicole Sesternino for welcoming their second baby boy into the world this Thursday. Anthony Sesternino was born. So if you haven't already, please tweet Rob and Nicole. It's at Rob Sesternino and at Nicole Loves Shoes, and let them know how excited you are for them, because I'm really excited for them. I'm super happy that everything went well. And it kind of sucks that we didn't get a voicemail show this week, but it's totally understandable. And the fact that Rob still didn't know it all, still had Josh Wigler fill in and do the recap and the exit interview and everything was awesome. So check that out. He talked to Marty Piombo and Andrew Savage over at robhaswebsite.com. And make sure before, if you do like this show, if you want to hear more about this each and every week, you can subscribe on iTunes. It's robhaswebsite.com/RHAPpy Hour. That is happy hour with an R at the front. You can also find us on YouTube, youtube.com/ well, actually, I don't even think we have that set up. So it's just Reality TV RHAP-ups on YouTube. Okay, Colin, you ready to talk about this Survivor episode? There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, let me just first say congratulations once again to Rob and Nicole. That was really cool. I was following the whole day on Snapchat. That was really exciting. And just also, it's really exciting for me because, normally it's just me and Dom and we're not live and we don't have, listener interaction or anything. So this is going to be very cool. I'm very excited to get into all this.
Yeah, and I'm excited for you to experience this as well. And I'm sure that I've got some questions that I want to ask you, and we can talk about the episode. But I'm sure there's a lot of fans of yours and listeners of yours that want to talk to you. So you guys later in the episode can definitely hop on here on video and chat with us. Colin and I will probably be talking probably an hour or so just about the episode. And then after that, we'll start taking your questions. That's when you guys can hop on. But I'll let you guys know when to do that. In the meantime, if you want to send us a question, just type /Q in the chat and you can do that. And yeah, at the end of the episode, we'll talk about some of the tweets from the survivors as well. Maybe play a little bit of the Rupert tweets with Colin too, because we didn't really get that this week on Rob's podcast. So hopefully this will be some bonus coverage that you guys can benefit from with the lack of the voicemail show this week. But enough early banter. Let's get into it, Colin. Let's talk about this episode. So big one this week. I thought that maybe this was kind of like a first episode after the merge, even though it wasn't the first episode after the merge. Maybe that's because the merge was so big right off the bat. We started at 13, but alas, it was a big one. Andrew Savage falls victim to a fantastic idol play by Kelly Wentworth this Wednesday. So some people are saying, Colin, that this is the greatest idol play of all time. Where does this rank for you in terms of idol plays?
I mean, it's certainly got to be up there. This is, in fact, the one that had the most votes negated, right? She had 9 votes. It's got to be. And it's certainly got to be up there. That being said, even, general advocate for incredible hyperbole that I am, I think it's a little early to say that it's definitely beyond some of the other stuff that we've seen. First and foremost, you got to consider Parvati with the 2 idols. I think that is probably the gold standard at this point. It's going to take more than a couple of days for me to cement something as firmly above that. But I think it's definitely got to be in the discussion. What else? What other big notable ones? I'm sure, anytime Russell's involved with when he idols Parvati, when Tyson votes himself out, I think that's got to be high up on the list. But this is certainly in that pantheon.
Yeah, I think I'm with you for sure. I think maybe those ones are kind of in its own tier, and then this one is just on the bottom of that tier or the top of the next tier below that. But it's certainly knocking on the door, and it was really exciting for me, and I think a lot of people. I didn't see it coming. For those of you who are familiar with Canadian reality TV people, the Ginger Ninja was texting me this week saying that was the greatest episode of Survivor he had ever seen, and that he cried. It was so good. So
wow,
yeah. So there you go. I mean, it was a lot of people really enjoyed this one. I did too, and it was fun. It was crazy. And really a big reason, well, the only reason why we got that moment was because there was no idol split this week. It was just a move in which everybody said, all right, let's get our votes. We got all 9 of us. Let's throw them on Wentworth and we'll see what happens. So, Colin, there's been a lot of debate over the seasons, over the past few years on Know-It-Alls with Rob and Steven saying, should you split the vote? Should you not split the vote? Now that we saw it fail in such an epic fashion here, what should future Survivor players take away from this?
I still think you always have to at least be considering the split vote and probably leaning it unless you have a really strong reason not to do it. And in this case, I think it really just came down to they all thought it was 0% that Kelly Wentworth had an idol. If they thought there was any prayer, of course they would have split the votes and taken the risk, because the risk of an idol is too much compared to the risk of someone, a couple of people flipping and turning the tables on them. So I think really, I've always generally, I guess, to answer part of your question, been an advocate for splitting the votes, just because I'm really a better safe than sorry person in general, but particularly in Survivor, when you only typically have one life in the game. I think it's worth even if you may not lose political capital by splitting on someone when you know one of them staying, but even if you know that they're going to be slightly mad at you, whoever stays, that's probably worth the risk of, that you assume when one of your close allies is leaving as the alternative a decent enough percentage of the time.
Yeah, I think that we saw that this week. Sure, maybe you're going to make Sierra or someone upset, but does that really hurt you that much?
Right.
No. She's at the bottom. What's she going to do to you? She needs some of you guys to do stuff. And Sierra's the kind of person that is going to understand if you do something like that. Abby Maria, maybe not so much, but Sierra is I feel like a rational player, somebody who is open to working with all different types of people. But let's talk about Sierra this week, and just that vote in particular. Why do you think that they chose to vote for Kelly Wentworth instead of Sierra? Because Sierra was really she's the loudest person in this Three Amigas crew. She's the one saying, come on, guys, let's play the game. Let's play the game. What do you think was going on there?
I think there's kind of this almost like new evolution, and maybe it's not that new, but we're definitely seeing it, in my opinion, here with Sierra, where I think there's a lot of merit to, if you are in the majority alliance and you have this kind of vocal minority leader and then a couple of minority lackeys, so to speak, and not to put them in that terms, just to kind of generalize it. I think there's a lot of value in leaving in the person that everyone knows is kind of sketchy and can't be trusted. And in this case, maybe Sierra is not sketchy and can't be trusted, but she's vocally, about doing her own thing, and everyone knows that that's her agenda. Whereas Wentworth, if you vote Sierra out and leave Wentworth in, she could sneak under the radar and potentially get in some people's good graces. So I think we could potentially start seeing even more of that. And I think, honestly, Survivor China was like the first time I ever saw anything close to that. And I don't remember what the vote even was. I think it had to do with Jamie in some capacity. But I think there's a lot of merit to that in general. So I'm totally fine with going Wentworth there.
Yeah, I haven't rewatched Survivor China in a while, but I'm thinking, I guess it was Jamie Dugan and Eric. Was that his name? The guy she
Yeah.
With? Yeah, right. I think
they're still married.
Yeah, that's crazy that they're still married, which is nuts. I mean, if you think of Survivor showmances, that's not one that you would immediately go to in terms of who you think would be married. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. I think that is something that future players should certainly be thinking about, because with a Kelly, yeah, for sure, Kelly Wentworth, if she's left in the game on her own as a free agent, she's a lot scarier, at least to me, I feel like would be a lot scarier than Sierra, somebody who has already burned a lot of bridges, somebody who is already, people kind of view her in the same light as they were viewing Cass a week ago. So I definitely see that. And it's just, I was just interested though. I thought Savage was just so anti-Sierra and just wanted her on so badly, but I guess Savage didn't have as much pull in the game as at least as much as I thought he had, and as much as he probably thought he had, because he didn't get to go through with his plan to vote out Steven, and he didn't get to go through with getting rid of Sierra, who I imagine he probably wanted to take out. What do you think about the decision by the Bion crew as a whole to cancel the plan on getting rid of Steven, deciding, okay, let's get rid of the Sierras, the Wentworths right now. Let's put Steven aside. We'll do that later. Do you think that now that we've seen what happened to those guys, do you think that they made the wrong move? Should they have just gone after Steven and taken him out instead?
I don't even know. I think because the reason, at least as it was depicted, was that they didn't want to create like such a blatant fracture within the tribe this early. And if, even if you do, knowing what you know now, obviously you don't want Savage getting idled out. But I think knowing what you know now, the only change I would really make is split the vote. I still think whether or not someone has an idol and whether or not you split the vote it doesn't pertain to whether or not going for Steven is the right idea. So I think if you're going to decide to not go for Steven, yeah, I think basically the big takeaway is split the vote. I don't think it was the right time to be going for Steven. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Selfishly for me, I'm glad that Steven, that they did not decide to do that. I think everybody probably, for the most part, listening to this was also very happy. I think Steven is very celebrated amongst the diehard Survivor fans and the RHAP community. So, yeah, it was. I was glad with that as well. But yeah, I'm with you. I think splitting the vote is really what it comes down to. Now, let's talk about Steven for a little bit here as well. There's something interesting that.
Well, do you think there's any merit to voting for Abby quickly?
Any merit to voting for Abby? Well, I feel like if your mindset is that Kelly Wentworth is threatening and that is why you want to take her out, then I feel like there isn't really merit in getting rid of Abby Maria, because
I think that's what it was too.
Right? If that is where they're coming from, then no. If they're coming from the mindset of, okay, who of these three does not have an idol that we can just dump 9 votes on, then I think, Abby Maria probably would have been the right person to dump the votes on, because as far as I can understand, as far as I believe the people in the game perceive it, there was no idol at the Angkor Beach. And there was no idol at the Angkor Beach, and it just didn't seem like she is the kind of person that would have a hidden immunity idol. So I think that is really what it comes down to there, and that is why that's why it would make sense to vote for Abby in that scenario and not go for Kelly Wentworth. But again, coming from where they were thinking, I think that they made the right move in that spot, in that Wentworth, she's a threat. She's somebody who could actually do something in the game. Can Abby really swing a lot of other people in the game? I don't really know. I don't really think so, but I guess we'll see and we'll find out. And for those of you in the chat watching this live, Colin actually got evicted from this podcast somehow. Maybe somebody threw a hidden immunity idol out at him. I can hear you. I cannot see you though. So
was
Colin,
that
yeah.
weird?
So
I can see myself.
Okay, so if you want to refresh, I can't see you. So refresh and hop right back in, Colin. That would be great. So Colin's going to join us in a sec. But yeah, it was a really interesting episode in that sense. And I'm excited to see what happens here, guys, because I think that there are plenty of different ways in which this game can unfold. And Colin's back.
Okay,
so
sorry about that.
Sorry about that, Colin.
I know from seeing some of your other shows, I know Blab just tends to do that from time to time.
Yeah, it does. So apologies for that, and to you guys in the chat. But let's talk about something else here. And I wanted to talk about this point with Stephen Fishback, sure. And this was talked about on Survivor Know-It-Alls this week with Rob and Josh. And Stephen was at Tribal Council. Sierra is going off on this tirade, whatever you want to call it, about how people are not playing the game, how there's people on the bottom, there's a hierarchy, there's 4 people or 5 people we don't know that are running the game right now, and we need to take them out. And Steven says, no, there is no hierarchy in this game. This is a season which is different than the 30 seasons prior to.
Sure.
It's completely different. It's its own thing. Colin, what was the motive for Steven saying this?
I mean, to get himself out of a jam in a situation where he thinks maybe she's not going to blow up my spot in this kind of controlled environment, which seemed to have worked out. But if that was the response he gave me and I was in Sierra's spot, I mean, I would be like, bullshit, dude. Like, that is not how it works ever. That's certainly not how it's working on an all returnees season.
No, right? And I mean, I don't know why. And I feel like he said this a few times, that this is a season that is different than any of the 30 seasons prior to it. Is it really, Steven? No, I don't think so. And I just find it interesting that he keeps hammering this point. And I don't know if I feel like he's just, I'm with you. I think he's just saying this to try to, appease the people that are on the bottom and try to convince them, no, this is different and there is no hierarchy and whatnot. But I don't know. He's really, really beating this drum.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Steven really is, with the poetry and with this about how it's just a great group. He really is becoming coach. But I firmly believe that Steven is not there actually thinking. There is a 0.0% chance that Steven is thinking we're all even and we'll get to final 9 and figure it out. We're getting secret scenes of him blatantly contradicting himself with what he's compared to what he's saying in public.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And if you didn't check out the secret scenes this week, definitely see that. Steven talks about wanting to work with Sierra moving forward. And maybe now that we've seen this big play, Savage is out of the game, we can see some of that in the upcoming rounds. Colin, what do you think about the three Amigas in their spot here? If that's what we want to call them. It's Abby Maria, Kelly Wentworth. Yeah, I think it's a great name. Josh Wiggler, Rob Cesternino came up with that. The three Amigas. So Abby Maria, Kelly Wentworth, and Sierra Easton, they're all together. And they're in the spot now. They made a huge play this week. They got rid of Andrew Savage. But if we look at the numbers just strictly, it's still, in terms of how the vote went, it's still 8-3. So there's 11 people left in the game. They're a huge minority. What do the three Amigas have to do to avoid the fate that the three Amigos suffered in Survivor Caramoan?
I think you just nailed it with the two things you just said. There are 11 people left, which is a crucial number, and they're in the vast minority, where it takes three people flipping over, but that's not that scary of a proposition when you're flipping to be even with the part of the alliance. If this new alliance becomes final 6, at least that's a fair fight there. It's not like two people flipping into a group of 4. It's not like what was Terry Dietz at the Lamina tribe saying, "Hey, come with us," and then or any of classic scenario where people try to get Upolu is a great example. Is hey, come flip with us, and then we'll immediately vote you out as soon as it's convenient. Point being, I think it's great that there is this odd number of people left, a lot of really aggressive game players left, and they are such a small group compared to the other big voting blocks that we've seen. I think it could be an appealing prospect for some people, particularly Steven, I would say. Who I think is really open to that kind of big move at this point to potentially really flip things and work with them.
Okay. Hey, Colin, you want to just say that again? Sorry,
sure.
Audio cut out.
Where should I pick up?
Just the last 30 seconds. Sorry, man.
Well, okay. I would just close by saying, because they're in such a vast minority, I think it's not beyond Steven Fishback in particular to want to take advantage of potentially this situation and really flip the game on its head. He seems to be dead set in going after Joe, and he's got to lose eventually, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, I've said this several times. If anyone's going to win 10 immunities in a row, it's Joe. But just looking at it, there's bound to be one of these things with balls that Keith Nale is better at than Joe is, and he's going to lose. I mean, you can't be good at every single carnival game that they throw at you.
You're going to get unlucky. They're carnival games for a reason. Yeah, you can't just keep pressing. Even if you're an 80% favorite, over 10 iterations, you're a huge underdog to run the table.
Exactly.
And by the way, I keep giving a thumbs up. This is a little inside scoop on what Dom and I do. This is when the other one's talking. It's just a tick I have. This is our signal for I'm ready when you're done.
All right, there we go. I'm excited. So there we go. So now
I'm sorry. It's just impulse at this point.
Inside baseball. So now I know this is great, Colin. So yeah, I'll give you the thumbs up. You give me the thumbs up.
I'm not doing it on purpose. I swear. And I'm not just agreeing with everything you're saying without being vocal about it.
Well, if you guys in the chat or when you guys hop on and ask some video questions later, you guys give us some thumbs up as well. And we'll see how that goes.
By the way, I've overtaken you by 10,000 now. Recently.
You have. So there we go. We were talking about props in the pre-show of this podcast. Colin is now at 11,000. I'm at 1,000. So yeah, he's at 10,000 more than me.
Can I set a new? I want to see how quickly they can get Jordan to catch up now.
Okay, so here we go. So right now it's 3:35 Eastern time. Let's see how long it takes for me to catch.
Dance puppets.
Okay. But let's talk about the Joe thing and Steven. And that's something that I think it's going to come to a head at some point here. So what do you think? What do you think's next here? We've got 11 people left in the game. There are so many different directions in which this thing can go. But I feel like the Steven and Joe thing is probably we're going to find out what's going to happen sooner rather than later with those two, correct?
I think we have to. I mean, unless Joe just keeps winning the challenges and Steven keeps dodging the big move coming against him, I guess it could be a while, but I have to think. I mean, we've just seen so much of it lately. that it feels like it's got to come to loggerheads, like you said, sooner rather than later. It would at least be my call. So I think as soon as this next episode, potentially.
So if you're Joe, because I feel like Steven is probably the favorite in this scenario, in that if Joe does not have immunity, he's in big trouble. Last week, you had Antonio Mazzaro on your show, and you were talking to him about the idea of your Joe of going to people and saying, hey, if you leave me in the game, I'm somebody who is always going to go out before you do. Do you want to elaborate on that point a little bit and talk about what Joe needs to do in order to survive and to convince people to take out Steven instead of him?
Sure. I mean, we saw Jeremy voice similar ideas in this very episode. I'm a huge proponent of buffers, where people you can point to or situations you can point to, like, a final 7 is a good example of, like, if there's a clear group of 4, you can't let them get to final 8 or final 7, because then they can force a tie or take majority. So that, like, forces some vote against them earlier, from final 9 or forward. And I think having someone like Joe left in the game, if you are Jeremy, someone you can point to as always a bigger threat than you are, where if we are both unimmune, it's never going to be me being Jeremy, if Joe is also one of the options. So the longer that he can keep Joe around, it's basically just his meal ticket, essentially. Like, I really do believe that Joe could be, Jeremy's, like, pass to $1 million potentially.
So if he is Jeremy's pass to $1 million, then because eventually I think the buffer strategy is great. I think it's an excellent idea. It's something that when I played Big Brother, that was something that I had in the back of my mind at all times. Didn't really work out for me, but in Survivor,
you have people in your defense to use down the end there.
Yeah. But I think that in Survivor, I think that you can do it a little bit easier, because it's each round, every 3 days, there's a vote. Everybody's up for elimination. It's not just 2 people all the time, and you can argue anybody to go home rather than just arguing against a certain person. But if you are Jeremy and say you think, okay, well, because right now it seems like he wants to really use Steven. We saw that confessional from him saying, me and Steven, we got this bond. We've been here for 20 days. We've been working together. He wants to go deep into the game with him. So if Jeremy were to say, okay, I want to go with Joe instead, what's the game plan for Jeremy then? When would you take – because eventually at some point you're going to reach a point of no return in which Joe is going to get to the end. You might get there with Joe, but you have a really, really hard time pleading your case for the $1 million against him. So when would you take him out in that, if you were hypothetically in this spot with Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, that's really not only dealing with Joe in general, but also dealing with Joe when Steven is there constantly harping on, we've got to get rid of Joe, and you don't want to. As I was talking about with Antonio, I think I said final 7 is probably even the point past which I would be comfortable leaving Joe in the game. I would probably not even want him there that close to the end, that close to running the table. But I think probably around final 9, final 10 is where I would want him there up to that point. But then as soon as he doesn't win one, he's gone. And maybe he does win a couple and he runs the table even to final 6 or final 5, and that's okay. He's just an even better endgame buffer in that case. As long as he doesn't run the table completely, then I'm okay with it. But the odds of him running the table completely, if you give him that opportunity, if you willingly take him to final 7, I think that's too much of a risk. But I would say right before then is where I would want him to leave in a perfect world.
Okay. Now let's say just hypothetically, okay? I love talking about these scenarios, but let's say that it's somehow, some way, Joe manages to survive, convince people to keep him around for a few votes. He gets to final 7, he gets to final 6, and then he does run the table. Is there any person in the game that could beat Joe in a final 3 if he were to run the table, or is it impossible? Is it a game, set, match?
I mean, just kind of like quickly running through the Rolodex, I don't know if there's – it seems like, if he is running the table, he's going to probably have some say in who he's there with, and he's not going to let anyone get there that is even drawing live to get a vote against him in all likelihood. So I would definitely say he is an overwhelming favorite if he does run the table to win. That said, like, this is a returnees season, and maybe there are some people that don't really prioritize challenges. Like, I know generally I don't prioritize challenges that much, and I wouldn't be inclined to root for someone purely because they won X number of challenges. But I think in that case, where if it is a situation where he was able to get himself to the point that he was able to run the table rather than running it from 13 down to 3, that would be a big difference maker for me. And I think he would get my vote even in that. I think he's got to be the favorite. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if it's 13 to 13 to
Yeah,
30,
forget it. How do you not?
you can't not. But maybe, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think that depending on who he's there with, I mean, if he's there with a Jeremy or a Tasha or somebody who was at the forefront of a lot of people's minds throughout the game, who was in danger, I think then maybe they could garner some consideration in that spot. Maybe Steven Fishback if he's doing some things, but Steven and Joe are not going to end up in the final two. Who are we kidding? But Spencer is another one as well. I think if he was to get there, I feel like Sierra, Kelly Wentworth, they'll have a really hard path to the final three if they do make it there. So I don't know. I think that it would be very tough, but the All-Stars thing is a really good point because I feel like people who are playing it a second time are going to value things that are different than just straight up challenge wins. If you look at what Joe is probably going to be doing strategically to get to the final three, it's probably not going to be anything out of this world. It's probably going to just be minor things. He's going to be a part of an alliance. He's not going to be running an alliance. He's not going to be really calling any shots. At least I don't think so based on what I've seen out of Joe so far in his Survivor career. But yeah, I think that's something that I would like to see because I think that it would be very exciting and it would be very interesting. Last season, Survivor Worlds Apart, we saw Mike Holloway and in which he went on that huge run. But I think the difference with Mike Holloway was, well, one, he went on the run and he ended up winning the game. But at the same time, he was in the final. He had two people with him in the final three that weren't really the greatest in terms of strategy. They weren't the greatest socially. They didn't do a ton else. I mean, I guess you could say Mama C, but you're sitting there with Will. I mean, Will is dead weight. He's literally done nothing. And I think that was probably a big reason why. I think if maybe Mike was sitting at the end with a Kelly, or if he was sitting at the end with, I don't know, maybe, and again, these people went early, but if it was a Joe, if it was a Jen, or even if it was a Max or a Shireen, someone like that who had to make some strategic moves to get there more so than what Mama C did, then maybe they'd have a chance. But I'm not. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm wondering about, as far as Worlds Apart is concerned. By the way, we just tied. We're completely deadlocked, right? And there you go.
So I'm still deadlocked. There we go. So it took about 9 minutes, I think.
Okay. Now you guys do whatever you want. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you puppets earlier. Okay. But my question about Worlds Apart is how much the Mike running the table, because no one at the end was even competitive with him in the challenges, plays a role in how the boot order goes here. Like we saw, and, we talked to a ton of people from Survivor South Pacific, but, by far our most extensive coverage of any season for our interviews. And across the board, they said it would have gone differently if we didn't have to worry about Ozzy over on Redemption Island. We needed to keep in people like Albert and Sophie, and like all of us needed to keep each other because someone had to eventually beat him. And I wonder if that's going to have an impact on Joe now after seeing what Mike did last time, if they're going to start thinking, hey, maybe, Steven's not going to be my ally in the end game, and he's also not going to be helpful in beating people in challenges. Maybe now's the time to go, or maybe things get turned on Abby earlier than they otherwise would, or people like Kimmy, who knows? But something like that, where I could see it becoming the case where they're just nervous about letting Joe get there with a bunch of just bad challenge competitors.
Yeah, I think that's something that I would be incredibly nervous about if I was out there, because I know for a fact that if winning 10 immunities in a row is very unlikely for anybody to pull off. But I know if I went against Joe in 10 random carnival games, I would lose all 10. And I'm sure that certain other people out there are in the same boat. So eventually, I mean, depending on who's left in the game, that does get scary at a certain point. But let's talk about next week. What do you think is going to happen here? Do you think that we're going to be at the final 11? We've got these three amigas. Do you think that they're going to be able to pull this thing off? Are they going to pull some people over? Is it going to be Steven versus Joe and one of them goes home? Is it something completely different? Where do you see things playing out from here?
Okay, well, I think the place to begin looking at it is we have 11 people left. We have those three against ostensibly this group of 8. So they could theoretically split the vote 4-4 against the 3 and just take out whomever they want out of that group of 3. Assuming none of them finds the idol or whatever. Although I do want to talk about that later because I think there is a new one going back in next week, and that's part of what the advantage is. I feel like, we're just getting so close to the boiling point where eventually it's got to tip, and eventually this big move is going to happen, and it's not just going to be an easy split. I feel like that group of three, the three amigas, really could look like a really tasty prospect is for someone trying to make a big move against Steven or Joe or maybe Spencer, whoever it is, Jeremy, who knows. So I honestly feel like, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but I think actually this week it's looking like something big may actually go down.
Yeah, and I think it would be in the best interest of someone like Joe to try and team up with those guys and to go at Steven. Or maybe, I don't know, I feel like it's in a perfect world if Steven and Joe could work together and go with those girls, if they weren't just so against each other. I think that could be something. If those guys went with, I don't know, if they pulled over Kimmy or somebody and they went with those three girls, I think that could be something good. It's not going to happen, but it's going to be exciting. And those three, I think, are really going to play an interesting role moving forward. I was really scared after that first merge episode that we were just going to see it begonging for a few weeks, but after that last episode, I think that it's safe to say it's going to be pretty wild from here on out. Now, you referenced the idol that's going to be going back into play. We saw in the Next Time on Survivor, Jeff has the little rope thing and he like cuts it, and then the buoys come up and he says, all right, next person to touch their buoy gets an advantage in the game. And that's all we see. So we imagine that is probably a clue to an idol. Is there an idol right there? Because we've seen idols at challenges in the season. What do you think that is, Colin?
I would guess that it's a clue to an idol. And my early speculation, and I am certainly not the only one speculating this, nor would I have even noticed it, is that the idol is somehow related to the thing that's on top of that water lid at their camp that's been zoomed in on a few times. I'm guessing they get a clue that leads them there, and they either the idol's there or that tells them where the idol is at the next challenge or whatever. The big concern, or at least my first thought on this, is like, say I want that. Even if I want that, if Joe wants it too, I can never get it because Joe is a better swimmer than me. And like as soon as I jump in, it's not like whoever the first one off gets the advantage where you can wait and see who jumps in. And if they're a bad swimmer, you can just send someone in to just beat them to it. So I think that's at least one concern for me. If I was not one of the stronger swimmers, I would be really reluctant to go for it. But I think the interesting person for the most part is clearly Joe, who I think with one immunity necklace, I'm guessing this is an immunity challenge that he would have to forfeit to get this advantage. And best case scenario seems like the advantage is just an idol that he would, theoretically have to use that night anyway, because now he's the guy who just got the idol clue and he could have just had the immunity necklace and not had that stigma on him. At the same time, I really feel like an idol is way more powerful than just the necklace. The necklace is temporary. The idol you can flash and potentially divert the votes off of you. I don't know if he would do that. Maybe he would still go and play it. And if that were the case, I would recommend just staying on. But I think the more plus EV, to put it in gambling terms, play is actually going for that advantage, because maybe it's like another double vote. Maybe it's something interesting and brand new that could give you a huge edge. Maybe it's a Tyler Perry idol. Who knows?
You never know. That would be crazy. Colin, if you want to, can you just refresh your thing again?
Sure. Sorry.
I can hear you, but I can't see you. Thank you. So Colin will be back with us in a sec, but that's a really interesting point that Colin brought up there. The idea that we could see a double voted scenario. We could see an advantage. So the thing that Dan Foley got, that could be something that Jeff Probst is offering out there. We could also see another hidden immunity idol. We could see, I don't know, it could be a multitude of things. The Tyler Perry idol thing would be very interesting. Which of those three things would you like to see most as a viewer, Colin? What would be most compelling to watch?
Okay, so we have the Tyler Perry idol, a hidden immunity idol, normal, and a double vote. I missed the first one.
Yes, those are the three. Yeah.
Okay. Honestly, I think I would most prefer seeing just a normal idol. I think it's a classic for a reason. I think it totally serves its purpose within the game. I think they found the right amount of power for it. The Tyler Perry idol, it should be called the Tyler Power idol, because it is blatantly overpowered, I guess. It's just not even remotely a fair fight, I would say, at this point. Like, there is no reasonable counterplay to it other than have the person unimmune twice, which is a pretty tall order within the game. And then the double vote, I just don't know if with this many people it would have that big of an impact. I would probably rather save the double vote for another one of these kind of mid-challenge. Whoever wants the advantage, go for it. And then the later one is a double vote.
Yeah, maybe if we have an auction and the double vote is up for grabs, and then whether maybe at 7 or something. I think that would be something that would be fun to watch. And that's something I really want to see again, because I feel like, I don't know, do we really want the only double vote ever going to the greatest strategist in Survivor history and Dan Foley? Not really. So it would be exciting to see if one of these other people managed to get it in their hands. But knowing our luck, if the double vote comes out, Keith Nale will get it, and then and then it'll just go to waste. So
that's how Joe's getting to is Keith gets the double vote. Joe's keeping around the Keiths and Kimmys and Kelly Wigglesworths of the world, and that's it. You know, he convinces Joe that final 3 till they die, and that's good enough for Keith. All right, yeah, I said that backwards. Yeah,
I got what you're saying, but yeah. I got these 2 votes. I can vote for Joe twice. All right, I guess I'll go ahead and do that. Like, I can't wait. I couldn't imagine. I would love to see the raw footage of Keith attempting to use double votes.
Keith trying to just understand what his power was when he first received it. Like,
I can vote twice. What?
He's like unclear about if it's 2 additional votes or just 2 total votes, and he keeps going back and forth. It's a nice little who's on first scenario. Yeah.
Oh, so good. Classic Keith Nale moment that we saw this week too, with Keith driving the rickshaw. He says to the group, what's that called? That rickshaw? No, that's not it. And I believe it was Kelly Wigglesworth, and she said, no, it's a tuk-tuk. Oh yeah, Toto. Yeah, Toto. That's what it is. Oh yeah, I love that.
This is the most classic Keith moment.
It really is. Yeah, I'm gonna get a Cambodian driver's license.
Yeah,
so good. I thought that was
catchphrase and all. You call Will Hall.
You call Will Hall. The episode got named after him.
Yeah.
What do you think about this Keith Nale edit? What are we supposed to think from basically seeing nothing of Keith, then we've been getting a few moments here and there. There was Taron Armstrong mentioned last week when he called in to talk to Kevin Martin and I, that there was a scene of Keith, I believe Savage was talking, and then in the background, Keith Nale is practicing his golf swing. It's pretty funny. So he's just doing all these weird and wacky things. What am I supposed to get from this, Colin? Because you like to, what's going on with the edit. So what's happening here?
I feel like this is exactly why you bring Keith back, right? Like, this is why people like him in the first place. He's not overbearing on any episode ever at all. But what you see of Keith, you really like. It's not the end of the world if you go a couple of episodes without seeing him. But when he is featured, he really seems to deliver all the time. And he was someone, admittedly, I was not overly thrilled with seeing back. I know, actually, you mentioned Keith and Wu were the same two for me. That I was just thinking, what more are they realistically going to bring to the table? But this scene, I think it's not anything more than we saw from Keith for my money. There's nothing substantially more, but it is certainly good enough and worthwhile. And I'm totally fine at this point with Keith being there. And I have resigned myself to the fact that Keith's going to be there for a while. So I hope that the scenes can stay this good, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I think that he's great comic relief. He's great for people who I feel like the average Survivor fan really enjoys seeing those Keith Nale moments. I think that's it. And your Woo moments with the Sonic the Hedgehog, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily people who are listening to the Dom and Colin podcast, but at the same time, I think that it's still. If you're going to put something in the episode, I prefer to see that than to see a Gerard Manley Hopkins poem. So I think that was that was a good moment from Keith. I really
shots
liked
fired at Gerard Manley Hopkins.
I mean, it wasn't bad, but I mean, give me Keith in the it's a Toto. Oh yeah, driving it around and Joe telling don't drink and drive and all that stuff. I thought that was great. It was a really fun moment. Kelly Wentworth is dying of laughter. Quite just a real moment from Survivor. I think.
Do you think he can win though? Is he still in your mix for you
to win?
Yeah.
No, Keith's not in the mix for me to win. I don't think Keith it has a shot to win. I think maybe if there's a really bitter jury or something, or if the final 3 is Keith Nale, Kelly Wigglesworth, and Kimmy Kappenberg. But even then, I don't think he probably wins. So I personally do not think Keith has a shot to win this game. Let's go through that though. Why don't we talk about? Do you listen to Bill Simmons, Colin?
I used to. I haven't been listening to him this season. I listened to his NFL stuff for the previous
NFL
seasons.
Stuff. Yeah. Okay, so him and for those of you who are not familiar, so Bill Simmons is a sports writer. Used to work for ESPN. Infamously got fired. Yes, exactly. Now works for HBO. Has his own podcast, and he has from the Jimmy Kimmel Live show on ABC. He has Jimmy Kimmel's cousin Sal come on his podcast each week.
I do know this, yeah.
Yeah, so to talk about the NFL. And so each week this year, maybe not so much each week, but throughout the season, they've been talking about people that just have no chance of making the playoffs, teams that they can just write off and that they're done. So let's just go through the entire cast here, Colin, quickly. And let's see if we can come up with a list of people that we think are completely drawing dead. Because I don't think there's many people, but I think that there might be a few people. So I feel like Jeremy, Jeremy's got a chance to win. So we don't need to even talk about Jeremy. We don't need to talk about Joe. Do you think Joe has a chance to win this game?
I think it's within the realm of possibility. I do not think it's that likely.
Okay, let's talk about Tasha. I think we're in agreement that Tasha definitely has a chance to win. I think
Tasha, up to a couple of episodes, I totally was on board with her being one of the front runners. At this point, she would honestly be in the Joe category for me, where I think it's possible, but it would surprise me compared to a lot of the other outcomes.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk why, and we'll go off on a tangent here. Why do you think that Tasha does not have a high likelihood of winning the game right now?
It just seems like, and this is something, it's been more based on what we're seeing in the episodes, but extrapolating from that, it just seems to me like Tasha's going to have a hard time going an entire 39 days without losing it over something at some point. And we've seen her get into it a bunch with Cass. And I'm guessing down the line, like we saw late in Cagayan, she was involved in a huge blowout with Tony, and that's why she ended up voting for Wu. I feel like she is much more than we see, generally speaking, a much more emotional player than typically comes across on TV. I think she looks great on TV. I think they definitely want us to like her and root for her, and I do, and I am. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of that is kind of sugar-coated almost. And so for that reason, almost despite what we're seeing of her on TV, I do think she can win, but it would kind of surprise me.
Okay. I don't disagree with that. I think that those are fair points. So we've gone through Jeremy, Joe, Tasha. Let's go to Stephen Fishback.
Yes.
And in terms of the edit, let's just talk about, so this is just completely off the cuff for me. So let's maybe a little transition. So let's talk about what we getting off of the edit if we think that they have a chance. So you think based on the edit, Steven has a shot to win this game. We can't write him off yet. But what do you think we can take? Like, what is the edit trying to tell us here? Because have we seen an edit quite like this ever in Survivor history, Colin, that you can recall?
None that I recall. It's really it's been pretty wild. I still think that confessional really is going to stand out for like years to come. The one of Steven crying. His edit's been really complicated, but I think at least the big takeaway for me to this point is he seems really focused on Joe. And in that kind of montage where he gave that crying at confessional, he had like a direct quote saying, either I can convince my allies to eventually turn on Joe, preferably the sooner rather than later, or I can't. And if I can't, then I have failed. So I'm really waiting to see how that plays out. If he is able to get them to turn on Joe, I think his stock rises immensely. I still don't know if that would put him in my top tier, but he would certainly still be in there with a solid chance. And it would just be one of the weirder winner stories I think we would have ever seen. If he does not manage to get out Joe, I think that's the end of times for him. And maybe it will be because that's literally him getting voted out instead of Joe getting voted out. But I think it's really got to, I'm waiting to see how that resolves to really project much more on Steven.
What about Spencer? Is Spencer in your upper tier in terms of people that you think can win this game? Yeah.
I would have Spencer number 2 right now behind Jeremy.
You have Spencer number 2 right now. And is that because we get the symphony music of him catching minnows in the sea?
That almost detracts from it. That makes me concerned that they're obviously going so far over the top that it must be because they're trying to like pander to all the people that voted for him and they want him to be the hero. And he doesn't necessarily have to do that well or play that well even for him to come across that way. And thus, I should not be placing that much stock in him as a winner. At the same time, as far as I can tell, people seem to be into the idea of working with him at this point. He seems to be in a good spot as far as people aren't interested in targeting him nearly as much as they seem to be interested in getting him on their side. I think he's a great speaker. I think people are going to like him, and because he's in that free agent role, I don't think people are going to mind that much when he votes them out. He's not an original buy-on, and there are so many of them left that they're not going to have hurt feelings from Spencer in particular.
Yeah, and they're not going to feel that sense of betrayal, like, oh, Spencer, you voted me out. I was working with you. No, because, I mean, they weren't really working with him at the start of the game. He was never,
Right.
I mean, he said it himself to Joe last week. Oh, well, I've never really worked with anyone more than a few days. And that is, honestly, it seems like the truth so far. So I'm with you there. I think if he makes a final tribal council situation, I think that he's got an excellent argument to win the game.
Well, like Rob says all the time, lowered expectations are the key to happiness. And I think the same is true of jurors. Like the less expectations they had from you as far as your hand in their demise, the more inclined they're going to be to vote for you.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point. And that's something I think in the off season, maybe I'll get into a jury discussion with maybe a couple people. But that is an interesting thing, because I certainly think in some instances that has happened. And there's been other instances where maybe, and this goes for Survivor and Big Brother, where maybe that hasn't necessarily happened. So, but yeah, and this time around, I do think that because it's an all-star season, it certainly could apply. Let's talk about the great Kimmy Kappenberg. Does Kimmy have a chance to win this game based on the edit, Colin?
No, right?
No, I don't think so. I mean, she got her first reward this week. That was great. I mean, she was super happy.
That's her win. That's her winner, right? That's the closest to winning she's getting.
Oh, good old Kimmy getting that reward. Okay, so Kimmy, no, we're writing her off. Okay, let's talk about Abby Maria.
One of my top tier candidates at this point. I know this is a controversial opinion. I really feel like Abby, she was visible at the beginning. She's got some nice downtime now that we're getting to the action and the merge. She's staying under the radar. People aren't looking to her as someone to be voting out. I think she's got to be up there, possibly above Spencer. I'm totally kidding. Obviously, yes. It doesn't need to be that obviously Abby has no chance.
In fairness to Abby Maria, I think that she had a great week this week. I mean, we got the one line from her.
What is that? What is a great week?
I mean, it's you got good one-liners, and where she comes across as likable, because I think a lot of times, I think in real life, Abby's a great person, at least from what I've understood. But on the show, something happens to Abby, and she just turns into a very vitriolic person. It's just not, she's very upset all the time, and it's not always the most fun to watch her. But this week, I mean, we got that one scene of her after the reward challenge where Stevens says, oh man, I really wanted to win. I'm so disappointed. And Abby Maria is like, get over it. Like, oh, you're being such a Debbie Downer, like saying that to Steven. I thought that was hilarious. And then also, too, when Savage gets voted out, then she said, yeah, well, at least you made jury. And then he flips her off. I mean, that was amazing. And I love that. And I don't know if many people know this, but when I got voted out of Big Brother Canada, the winner of the season, Sarah Hanlon, said to me, well, as I was walking up the stairs after I got blindsided, she said, well, at least you made jury. And I was too shocked to give her the middle finger, but I certainly was not.
There you go. Abby is
so winning. There we go. So I think Abby might be the winner of the season if Canadian reality TV shows and Survivor Cambodia somehow relate in some sense. And clearly there definitely must be a correlation in that. But seriously,
I think Abby should go in the Big Brother house. I think Abby would be amazing on Big Brother.
I think so too. I think that would be quite incredible. It would sort of be like DJ Palaszczuk, though. I feel like she would be one of the first. She'd have to be first or second out. Possibly. But I mean, the 1 or 2 weeks of her in the feeds would be, oh my gosh, glorious television. But also, side note as well, the flipping people off, that was seen multiple times this episode. We saw that when Savage, I mean, he gives the finger to his ball, and maybe an inappropriate comment there, but there's that.
As that happens, by the way, it cuts to Probst describing it, and there's Kelly Wentworth laughing hysterically in the background, which is an incredible kind of like piece of foreshadowing that I noticed. Honestly, I thought this episode was better on a rewatch than the first time I watched it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I rewatched it this morning. You rewatched it as well today. I think that, yeah, it was a great episode because you can pick out those little moments like that. And it was so funny. But there was that. I mean, Cass flips off the people as she comes into Tribal Council. Savage flips off Abby Maria as he leaves. Have we seen an episode in Survivor history in which the middle finger has been given to people or inanimate objects more than 3 times?
Oh man, I mean,
I don't think so, right?
The laundry list of episodes that are just drowning in blur between both Survivor and Big Brother, it's got to be a contender, right? I feel like Big Brother, Is Big Brother a higher middle finger volume than Survivor?
I think so. I mean, and there's also two, I guess you could count in Big Brother 14 that one time when Ian Terry is fingering Frank and he just goes like, and it's like that. And if you're watching in the audio,
solid verb choice.
But yeah, it's just he's like just pumping his fist back and forth. So
I love Jerry and BB10. Screw you! You're going home.
You're going home. Screw you, people. Yeah, Jerry BB10. I think that's a good one too. But yeah, I need to definitely look at all the Survivor episodes again because I think that one might take the cake in terms of people getting the middle finger. But anyway, so Abby, we say she has no chance. Let's talk about Abby's good pal, Sierra Easton. What do we think about Sierra's chances?
Sierra is, along with Steven, the two that are confusing me the most this season. When we look into the edit, I don't know how much listeners of this show generally care that much about the edit, but we talk quite a bit about the edit. And we were talking about Sierra early in the season. The premiere in particular is something that we're always on the lookout for, the people who are super quiet in the early episodes, in particular the premiere. And it took like 4 episodes for Sierra to even get on the radar, which would be virtually unprecedented for a winner, just looking through the numbers of past seasons. And maybe it's a situation kind of like the Alliance, where it's not hierarchical, and that's the first time in 30 seasons that's how it's going down. Maybe that's the same thing with the edit, where this is the first time in 30 seasons that they're just going to completely hide the winner for the first month of the show. But despite a very solid past couple of episodes, I would still be super surprised if Sierra won. What do you think about that?
Yeah,
because I know she's someone gaining a lot of traction.
She is gaining traction, but I think the thing is, it's what you said. You hit the nail on the head. I think the biggest thing is the premiere. We want to see that, and we have seen instances in which winners have not had a confessional in the premiere. Tina Wesson is probably the first one that comes to mind for a lot of people. But I think that 4 episodes before you even are really being thought about or talked about at all in any way, shape, or form, I think that is not really something you're looking for in a winner. At least that's not how the show would present you. So I do think that's something that's in the back of my mind. And I think it's sort of the way I'm looking at it is kind of in Survivor Caramoan, right? We saw this from Brenda Lowe, right? Because Brenda, the pre-merge, she was Purple Brenda. We didn't see anything of Brenda. We didn't hear from her at all, really. And then once the merge hit, we kind of saw more of Brenda. She became more popular. Didn't she win fan favorite on the finale or get close to it? Like something.
She got at least top 2. I don't remember if Malcolm won.
Yeah, Edward Morris in the chat is saying she was runner-up. But she was runner-up, and she basically had no confessionals at all for the first month. So
yeah, she went because we kept track, because Dom was a big Brenda fan.
Yes.
We kept track. She went 365 minutes of commercial-free airtime without a confessional.
I mean,
over 6 hours of commercial-free Survivor.
Okay, so Sierra, I guess, is not quite that bad, but, I mean, there was a point in which we saw nothing of Brenda, and then she kind of came on for the merge for a little bit, and it seemed like, okay, maybe she could do something here, and then she got voted out ultimately.
Well, I think the thing with that... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the difference for me, at least, between Brenda and Sierra is Brenda entered the season as not one of the kind of like, I don't want to describe it necessarily this way, but like top tier candidates for returnees. People weren't that thrilled to see Brenda. They weren't upset, but she wasn't one of the more.
I will say I was thrilled to see Brenda, and so was Dom. So
plenty of people were, I'm sure.
People.
Plenty of perverts out there were thrilled to see Brenda. But Sierra was certainly, I would say, like one of the stars entering this season, like one of the projected people that if they go on to do really well, CBS is going to pump the hell of on the TV episodes, and it's just not happening.
Yeah.
Like I have a very well publicized bet at this point about how many times Sierra voting her mom out was going to get mentioned on the show, and I'm getting absolutely slaughtered. Still, it has only come up once, and I think that is absolutely impossible if she goes on to win.
Yeah, exactly. I think that she's got the face of the franchise type of upside. She's sort of in the Spencer Bledsoe type of way. And I feel like we would have really seen a ton of Sierra early on in terms of what she was doing and that kind of thing if she were to walk away as the winner of the season. Maybe they're trying to knock us off the scent. Who knows? But I'm with you in thinking that it's probably a no for Sierra.
I hope they are. I would love them if they did. They just never seem to.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's talk about the two Kellys here. Let's talk about first Kelly Wigglesworth. I think we're probably in the same boat on this one.
I would imagine, unless your boat is being driven by Kelly's Wigglesworth, and thus you're losing. I guess she won the challenge this time, but yeah, she's not. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. So it's not.
I mean,
No.
what is it? What is there even to say about her at all? Not even
man,
just how did she win or not, just in general.
Yeah, and I mean, I talked about this last week with Kevin in that I don't know what to say about Kelly Wigglesworth, and it just sucks because I really was excited to see her play again and to hopefully make some noise and do some things. And no, you don't necessarily have to be like Jeff Warner, but I mean, even if you can be Jervis Peterson-esque, I think that is at least something. And we're not even getting that out of her. So yeah, I don't know. And
they must be disappointed, right? To not get
yeah,
out of what they would imagine is by far the easiest story for them to tell. Waiting 15, maybe not by far the easiest, but a very easy story to tell when she was from season 1.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you can easily go back to that and like in terms of framing the questioning in confessionals and that kind of thing. If you're the producers and production, I think absolutely that's something that they can build off of. And the fact that they're not getting any footage or anything to use or material, I think that it's certainly disappointing. It's probably very frustrating for them because I imagine they were expecting a lot out of Kelly Wigglesworth and they thought, okay, this is great. We're going to get the person who made it all the way to the final 2, the very first season, lost to Richard by 1 vote. It's a huge thing. 40 million people watch this. Is going to be great. And we're not really getting that. I mean, the show is still fine. It's doing well, but I imagine, yeah, it's not that's not what they expected for sure.
Well, I think they had high hopes, but I don't know if they necessarily had high expectations after kind of like interacting with her, where she's giving nothing to the press and everything like that. How can they realistically expect her to go out there and kill it with confessionals?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe not necessarily confessionals, but at least maybe playing the game a little bit and making some moves, getting into alliances, doing that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that if it was me, I would have some sort of expectations. Maybe not. Okay. Maybe not like, okay, you're going to be Spencer or you're going to be one of the faces of the show or something like that. But at least bringing something to the table and having a chance to help craft this story and talk about it, because it really writes itself, right, with Kelly Wigglesworth. Right. And the fact that she's not really giving anything to it, they probably expected something that they could use. But let's jump to the other Kelly. Let's talk about Kelly Wentworth. What do we think about Kelly Wentworth's chances of winning based on the edit so far?
I'm reasonably optimistic about Kelly Wentworth, as I often am, but I'm feeling pretty good. She's definitely my top tier. In order, and they're very close, is Jeremy, Spencer, and Wentworth. And prior to this, I had it as Jeremy, Wentworth, Spencer for a while. But now I'm actually feeling like, despite having this incredible episode and being America's hero and Twitter's hero and doing such a great job with her hidden immunity idol, and she earned, by the way, that non-split of a vote because she didn't tell anyone, because she was adamant about keeping it to herself. That is the result she got. She would have been gone if she had played that worse. So I think she totally earned that. But because of that, because she had such a great episode, I'm now wondering if all of the buildup to this point was because of this great big episode and not because she was going to go on to win. Like the fact that she had this great big payoff already almost knocks her down a little bit for me. Not down to the point that she would be my Jeremy, Spencer, and Wentworth are my clear top 3. I would say Tasha and Steven with an outside shot and Joe with an outside shot. Sierra, I guess I would give like 1 or 2% if it is a really weird edit. Other than that, I don't think anyone else can win. What about you?
Yeah, I think that's fairly accurate there.
Sorry if I skipped someone, by the way.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I was going to bring up Keith, but I think,
sure.
Yeah, Keith's not going to have a chance. We talked to you, asked me about that earlier. You don't think he's got a shot either. So, yeah, I think that's probably it. I think in terms of who's left in the game. I mean, again, if there's somehow a scenario in which it's Kimmy Kappenberg, Keith, and Kelly Wigglesworth, then maybe but I feel like the odds of that happening are just so slim, and that would require one of those 3 to kind of take control of the game and to start making some moves. But who knows? Maybe Keith will get those 2 votes, Colin. Maybe then he'll take a hold of the game and start running with it. But
possibilities are limitless, man. You don't know anything about Keith Nale. He's verbal Kent. That's a verbal Keith. That's what he is. He's taking over. He's losing the accent. The mustache is fake. Like,
oh man, that would be pretty sweet if that would have happened. I would love that. But a podcast host can dream, Colin.
yeah,
But
sure.
yeah, no, unfortunately, don't see that happening. All right, I think we got a good little discussion going there, so we can
Yeah.
start taking some of your questions. So if you guys want to hop on and talk to Colin and I, there's an open seat here. So I believe. I don't know exactly what it says because it's different for me because I'm the host. It might just say Colin or join or something, but you'll see it on your screen right by where it should be below where Colin and I are. So click on that if you want to join and talk to us. We've got 73 people here. Oh, now 72 people here in the chat watching us live. So we want to hear from you. We want to take your questions. So definitely come on and talk with us. And we want to hear what you have to say. But let's take some text questions first, Colin. So let's take this one from this one's from Tyler Trues for president on Twitter. He says, "What would Greg have a similar fate if he came back?" So I think he's referring to Kelly Wigglesworth and what we were talking about there.
Greg is a really, really tough cat to even speculate about, I would say, especially 15 years later. Excuse me. I think if he wanted to take it seriously, I think plenty of people, like if he had been out there this season, I think there would have been plenty of people that it would have been totally down to work with Greg. And I don't even know like how familiar he is with the show at this point. If he's been watching at all, I would honestly, I have to doubt it, right? It's not, is he realistically keeping up with Survivor? Especially 15 years later. So I think him going out there, if he went out there kind of like to troll CBS, obviously I don't think that would end well for him. Maybe it would. Maybe he could just fluke his way into a good spot. But I think his upside there is just like a more hilarious version of Keith, basically, where no one's really taking him seriously. I think if he wanted to do it, and like really apply himself to the game, he could be really, really good at it. He's a totally smart and personable and clearly hysterical guy. That said, I don't know how likely that is. I don't think Greg coming back, first of all, is ever really realistic. And second of all, if they somehow forced him back, that he would take it seriously.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too sure either. I think maybe with Greg, what we could see is he could play off as being a dumb guy and not really have an idea of what's going on. And then when in actuality, he knows more than he's letting on. And I think that could help him. But it would be interesting to see. And I know when you had Max Dawson on your podcast before he was even on Survivor Worlds Apart, he said that he was a former college classmate of Greg Buis. So maybe he could get in touch with Max. They could talk and he could film in on some stuff. Because I imagine, he probably is not paying too much attention to the game. But Greg would be an interesting one. That's somebody I think a lot of people would like.
I'd love it. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, would be awesome. And we are joined here by now a caller. We've got Fuggy Budenling is joining us on the line. Fuggy, how are you doing?
I'm doing just great. How are you guys?
We are great.
How's it going?
I'm just pretty good. I'm going to kill you here, Colin, because I'm sitting here on Stars playing some poker on a Saturday afternoon.
Where are you from?
I'm in Waterloo, Ontario.
Okay, cool. They got some good poker players in Waterloo.
Yes, absolutely. Like Timex,
exactly.
The school just up the street from me here. So, yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to say I had a really great weekend, RHAP-related weekend that was really cool. Got to meet, was in Toronto. We did like the meetup of, was the Tim Hortons Alliance kind of thing. And that was a lot of fun. And then the next day got to meet Jessica Leese was in town.
Ooh,
and got to meet Angie Chance and a bunch of other like RHAP people. Gotta say it was like a huge like we were all tense. We all thought Steven was going home. And then when that Savage vote came up,
what that would have been
it was just like burst of applause. It was so awesome. But you know what? I was kind of surprised because Jessica's sort of take on Steven winning was kind of like nil. He's got no chance whatsoever. And then I started to think about it, and it's like, who is he really going to beat in the final two? Like, do you guys have thoughts on that? Like, who would be his ideal final two opponents?
Well, I think that, and this is something that I've talked about a little bit on the podcast in the past. I know I had Taryn Armstrong hop on last week, and he said that he thinks Steven could beat a lot of people in the final three. But yeah, I think it's a very valid question. I think right now, with how things stand, I don't know if Steven would probably have to sit next to some combo of Kimmy Kappenberg and Keith or Kelly Wigglesworth, something like that, or maybe Sierra, because I think she might have rubbed a few people the wrong way. But I think that if Steven is to end up in the final three, he's going to have to do some things to get there. He's going to have to screw over some people. He's going to have to vote some people out. I think that having that on his resume, if he manages to get rid of Joe, if he manages to take out a Tasha, if he manages to take out someone like a Jeremy even, I think that would be something that would be really big on a resume. I think a lot of people, in terms of what people are looking for a winner of their season, and I think that if he is to do that, then I think he certainly has a chance. If he kind of sits back and doesn't really do too much, he's going to be in tough. Colin, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the big swing point for that is how he ends up dealing with Jeremy, because it looks like he does really trust Jeremy. We had that secret scene of him running through the list of people he trusted and people he could beat. At the end of the day, if I had to project Steven Fishback's motivations, I would say he's going to want to be there with GOATs. I think he's going to want there to be no doubt that if you're voting for the best way to win is for there to be no doubt about who people. But we saw Boston Rob use it to perfection in Redemption Island. I think he doesn't want to be in a situation where the topic of who played the best game or who is, in his idea, in honestly, in practical terms, like the air quotes most deserving, is even up for debate. He does not want, and he certainly doesn't want another JT situation. But I think he's well aware of all of that. Yeah. So I think his goal is going to be to get there at the end with people like Keith and Kit, probably not even Keith, like Kimmy and Kelly and Abby, probably specifically.
Yeah, Kimmy is a perfect ally in that sense.
And a question mark. Right?
But Jeremy's a big question. There was that early edit or that early episode where Jeremy's like, yeah, I'm more than happy to be your JT. And it's like, Steven's got to see this. I mean, how could he not see the obvious that, this is your JT 2.0, the black version? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think that that's a really good point. And I think that part of the problem with that, Fuggy, is that he is so focused right now on Joe. I need to get Joe out. He's got this tunnel vision. He wants to get rid of him. He's on his mind all the time and figuring out how to get rid of Joe. He's been focused on this for so long. And I think because of that, he isn't really thinking about Jeremy too much. I think another reason as well is that he's been with Jeremy every day for 21 days. Kimmy Kappenberg, Jeremy, those three have not left the same. They've always been together, the three of them. So I think
I think the thing that he's like forgetting about JT is that they did develop this huge trust, and trust is so important in the game. And it's one thing to say, okay, well, can I beat Jeremy? Can I not beat Jeremy? Can I trust Jeremy? I think he can. And Jeremy proved it in the episode this week where Steven was dead meat, and Jeremy really saved his ass there. Like you read Steven's article where it was like, okay, I guess I got to get the secondary fishy to my boy Jeremy. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if there's not for Jeremy, Steven
by the way, hi,
Taryn. Goes home. Yes, and Taryn Armstrong has been here waiting patiently to hop in. So, Taryn, what do you? First off, back to the initial question. What do you think about? So last week you talked about this. Steven right now arguing his case to win the game. You think he can do that, and why?
I really do, because I think in Tocantins, I think his biggest problem was that people didn't know what he had done throughout the season. They didn't know that he was this big strategist. They thought that JT was kind of the guy that did all the work, and JT was way more likable, and JT killed him in the final two speeches. But I think we've seen in this episode in particular that people are viewing Steven as this very smart, very strategic threat. So if he makes it to the end, I think he already has a much better chance at getting the votes than he did in his previous season, and I'm not sure that he's accounting for that. I think
he has.
Go ahead.
Well, I think he has. You're absolutely right. Like, this is something that could really increase his equity to win. The perception that he's going to be the mastermind every single time that he's at Final Tribal Council, I think he's going to have that going for him. But I think that's outweighed by people liking other people more than him. And it certainly seems like with Jeremy, that's the case. I could easily see that being the case with Spencer. I mean, it's impossible that he ends up there with Joe. Maybe that's the case with even someone like Sierra or Keith. Kelly Wentworth, that could easily be the case. And I think that's the bigger issue.
Yeah, there's plenty of other people there that think they're the mastermind of the season. that are big fans that have studied this game, Steven doesn't own exclusive property on that.
I feel like if Steven is there in the end, especially if he's not there with Jeremy, who I feel like has the most claim over Steven's game, Steven can say, look, guys, I just did it again. Don't make the same mistake that they did last time. I got me here. I'm the one that you were all afraid of. You were all saying Steven is this big strategic threat. And look at me, I'm sitting here now. So, I think for the most part, I think there are going to be a lot of people. They're Stephen, Kelly, or not Stephen, Spencer, Kelly. They're going to be people who want to vote for the most strategic person in the end.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to have a lot of sway over the jury. So I think he has more of a chance than he's giving himself credit for.
Couldn't they potentially still say, though, if they like the other person and would just default want to vote for the other person more, yeah, you did it again, and you're going to lose again because you did it in the exact same way.
Sure, but I feel like people don't dislike Steven to the point where they're
not at all.
Be like, it's impossible for you to win no matter how you get to the end. You know what I mean?
I think that's the big concern for me, too, though, is I feel like people would have a hard time disliking Steven. And maybe, again, as is always the case with Survivor, he's a lot different when he's out there. He's been out there for a month with no food and the sun beating down on him and high stakes decisions being made all the time. But I still have a hard time reconciling the Steven that I see on Know-It-Alls and on Twitter and in the secret scenes with the Steven that they're showing me on the TV. And that's a big reason that I'm concerned about his winning chances.
Well, but then how else are they going to portray this guy? They aren't going to portray him as the big alpha because he just isn't. So what other story are they going to tell about Steven other than like his more?
I think maybe the way in which in how Colin might be seeing it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Colin, feel free to hop in when you please. But I think if we were getting more of a winners-esque edit for him, we wouldn't see as much of this emotional kind of stuff from Steven, because Steven we see on Twitter is very, he's calm, he's cool, he's collected. He doesn't. Losing the reward challenge, you wouldn't see that from him. You wouldn't being upset like that. You wouldn't see him in the crying like that. And just how the show presented him early on, right? They made him look like a buffoon, kind of.
Yeah,
really,
exactly. You wouldn't see America's hero Andrew Savage describing him as the root of all evil.
I mean, so I don't know. Yeah, so there's that. I mean, mind you, Cochran, when he won, right? I mean, he had scenes similar to that. Mind you, more so those were in South Pacific than they were in Karamoan. So
does that count?
Yeah, I don't know if that counts. I don't think that counts. So I mean, there was in Karamoan though him getting sunburned early on, but there wasn't really so much of it. Was there in Karamoan of any of Cochran being like, oh, Cochran just sucks at this? No, right? I feel like there wasn't any of that.
Yeah. We are getting so many humiliating Steven in challenge moments too, and him pontificating about stuff that's not going his way.
Right. And like we see him running in the challenge, the one where they had to get oiled up and jump on the thing, like he's running like this. And like he's missing the targets.
To be fair, they don't need to edit that, you know.
That was it's just raw footage. They got it all. Okay.
Jeff Probst doesn't need to say, all right, Steven, let's show a 3-minute clip unedited of you at a challenge.
Oh man, so good. So good. That Steven running thing was like my favorite thing ever. I wish somehow they could have cut the Steven running and then Jeremy with a voiceover saying, Steven is the worst athlete I have ever seen. Right with that.
The montage, like Chariots of Fire.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be great. One
sidebar about Steven in challenges, just quickly. This episode, I noticed he tweeted this out when he called Jeff over like, we got it. He hadn't even looked at two of the sides, but he thought it was so close that just getting Jeff to check theirs first was worth it to call it early, which I think is actually a really, really heads up play. Because if you take an extra 5 seconds to rotate one of them, Jeff could already get over to the other team if they have it. But you're like calling dibs on Jeff.
Yeah, and the time that Jeff spends looking at the other thing, all the other team is just looking at Jeff and they're not concentrating on their puzzle.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good point. I think that's something for future people, definitely bring that up. I mean, even puzzle
big pot.
I think that's something that can certainly help you out a lot. But Foggy, thank you for calling in, man. Really appreciate it. Good chat.
All right. Thanks a lot for having me. Take care, guys. Somebody else call it.
All right. See ya. Okay, so Fuggy is out of here. So if you guys, if anyone else wants to hop in, you're more than welcome. And if we've got lots of people, then we'll cycle Taryn out as well. But until then, we'll see what happens. Here's we've got one from my good buddy Coach's Beard. He's coming in here. Hey, how's it going, Coach's Beard?
Going good. How about you?
Good. Anything you wanted to talk about in particular?
Yeah, I actually this isn't about this season. It's more about Survivor in general. But I was kind of curious what you guys thought of maybe, since they do 2 seasons a year, making one of them all new players and maybe a second one as a Survivor series, like the same 20 contestants year in and year out.
So the same ones each year?
Maybe like the bottom 3 get replaced every year, so you can still bring some new ones in, but kind of like a NASCAR type of thing where the same 20 are competing every time.
That would be very interesting. Colin, I'll throw that to you. What would you think?
Yeah, it would be really interesting. I think I'm just the kind of person who just thinks immediately about what could go wrong.
Well, sure.
And what goes wrong in there, I think a lot is people very quickly, there's at least several people that are just never going to be able to win, and everyone's going to know it, and they're going to eventually quit potentially. Why keep going back if you know you're going to just keep being the first one voted out?
But if we do something like this year with second chances, all these people feel like they have the chance to win. If we bring in 20 people who are good enough at the game that they can actually handle this, the 20 best strategists or the mixture of strategists and competition players, where we don't bring in your, who just keeps getting booted, our Francescas, then maybe then.
Yeah.
See, I think that you're onto something there. I do think, though, it might be more interesting to have a 1 season a year of all new people and then 1 season a year of just straight up returnees. And because the returnee pool is very large at this point, and Andrew Kirk in the chat is saying similar to what MTV does with the challenge, and that's essentially what the challenge does every season if you're familiar with that show. But they don't. I don't even think they take new people very often anymore. They've had a few seasons, fresh meat, where they do that. But regardless, that might be something cool. So that way we could see, because there's so many people that I think we would love to see again that I don't think we're going to be able to, just because there isn't a lot of time for it. But then that way we can get our T-Birds back on the show. We can get our Shane Powers back on the show. We can get Jim Rice. We can get I don't know if people want to see Troy Zan on the show. People who didn't get on this time. Hey, my dad loves Troy Zan. He was really bummed out when Troy Zan didn't get on. But Max Dawson, these kinds of people, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if we're going to see these people again. But if we were to have this format where, okay, we're going to see these people, we're going to see new players returnees once a year, then we could see that. Then we could see Cass again. Then we could see Shireen again. Then we could see Vetus again. So I think, that could be something interesting. And I think that might be something down the road that would be interesting to explore. Taryn, what do you think about that?
I'm definitely on board with that. I always like to see the returning player seasons. I feel like, especially with Survivor, it really brings a new level to the game, where when there's new people, they're kind of learning the game on the fly, and they're dealing with the survival elements, and that's entertaining in its own right. But I think it's an entirely different show when it's all returning people. So I think that would be really entertaining. As far as the same people coming back over and over, I feel like that would work really well with something like The Genius, where there's a lot of complexities and there's a lot of different challenges. With Survivor, I feel like, again, like Colin said, my first idea is, the same group of people are just going to stick together every single time, and then just
ensure that they're never the bottom 3.
Exactly.
But that is a very valid concern, because if you guys watch the challenge, that does happen. Like the same people work.
But I think the challenge, because I love the challenge, by the way. I love the challenge, but I think it's a lot more conducive. Like, the challenge is so physical, and so little of what happens on any given one season is really going to have huge ramifications. Maybe it'll come into play. Maybe because Jordan, not you, Jordan, but Jordan with one hand threw down all the things. He and Bananas are going to have a rivalry next time. But there's no concrete evidence of someone hating someone else when they just lost in an elimination challenge. Whereas if you keep voting people out, that's going to cement itself pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean or there's like, several years ago there was Kenny versus Wes all the time. That was a thing, and their armies were always going head to head. But it was always a different mishmash of people. So yeah, I don't know. It would be fun to watch though. I think that it would be. I would like to maybe try it, see what happens.
I'd love to see it for scientific purposes.
Yeah, I would definitely not be opposed. I just have some concerns about it actually going brilliantly smoothly long term.
One thing I'd say to combat that is, one, if it's like a 20 cast season, it'd be hard to get 11 people on board every time, because you can do any iteration of 2 tribes, 3 tribes, mix it up every time, the same people, but mix it up every time. And then, like I said, getting 11 people to be on board with the same strategy, and then the same 6 out of that 11 are going to be on board. Eventually, those people aren't going to want to see the same 2 or 3 people winning every time as well, and something will change.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to see.
Maybe there's merit to it takes people seeing how it plays out once for them to actually get their heads straight and make a move. Like next time, if they played Blood versus Water immediately again, if Sierra had Final 7 to do over, she wouldn't have to draw rocks at Final 6.
So there you go. I mean, who knows what would happen? And Jessica Frey in the chat says, this sounds like an ORG, and I kind of agree. But it would be kind of, I don't know. I think it would be cool. I would like to see it at least. If only we could have like a simulator or something to see what it would be like and how it would go before actually going ahead and doing it.
You know how 538, the statistics website, has like NFL simulators where they simulate every matchup like 10,000 times.
Yeah.
The Broncos are 82% favorites to beat the Rams or whatever. I wish we could do that for Survivor, where we really could see like equity breakdowns and random casts.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be amazing. I would love to see that.
If I had the ability to kidnap Big Brother and Survivor players and just force them to play over and over with different casts and maybe wipe their memory out every once in a while, I would absolutely do that.
Get one of those Men in Black sticks.
Exactly.
The Men in Black. Yeah, they're still there. That would be so cool. Coach Spear, thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good one, brother. All right. If anyone else wants to hop in, feel free. Oh, well, there's Andrew Kirk, just like that. He was waiting very patiently. So here we go. So Andrew Kirk's going to hop on. And in the meantime, we got a question from Edward Morris. And Edward Morris says, with Savage gone, who is most likely to flip with the 3 Amigas? Colin, I'll throw that to you.
I think it's got to be Steven. It seems like Steven's itching to get Joe out. That would be at least my gut response.
Yeah,
it seemed like a really appealing group of people to work with. Yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, Taryn?
I think Steven's probably the most likely. I don't know if I want him to do that, though, especially if it's just to get Joe out and he thinks he'll be able to go back in with Jeremy. I don't think that's going to work. I think if he's going to do it, he has to have Jeremy on board. So, yeah, I think he's probably the most likely. But, I mean, I could see Joe flipping now that he's lost Savage. And obviously Keith and Spencer are 2 people who, Keith is just kind of out there, and Spencer would be up for anything. If they had the numbers, I'm sure Spencer would flip. I don't know if he'd start a movement or anything, but I think he'd be on board.
You need to pull in yourself, the 3 Amigas, and 2 other people to get the majority.
Yeah, Andrew, what do you think about that?
First of all, how's it going, guys?
We're great. Thank you for coming on.
I think Spencer made a good quote the first merge tribal 2 weeks ago. He's like, alliance by convenience. So I can see him moving with the 3 Amigas.
I definitely could see that. I talked at great length with Spencer. That's definitely his style, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Andrew, you have a question for us?
I got a comment and then a question. I'm glad Savage is gone. I liked him in the beginning. But after the second tribe swap, I feel like he was being a little bit too cocky for my own liking. I felt like he was like, "Oh, I'm running the show," and obviously he wasn't.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people probably agree with you there.
Shocking development for Savage.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that some people had that feeling about Savage before he was on this season. I know if you listen to Dom and Colin's podcast with Koss before the season, they did a auction draft with all the players, and Koss's feelings on Andrew Savage were pretty much that. That was pretty funny listening to that. I really enjoyed that podcast. But yeah, I think that's the consensus with a lot of people on Savage right now. But so that's your comment. Question, Andrew.
I know after Heroes versus Villains, we had a new season. Then we had 2 returnings coming back. So if we had for season 33 2 returnings come back from this All-Star season, who would you guys want to see?
Wow, that's a really so you're saying like another coach versus Ozzy type of season? Okay. Ooh. All right. Colin, anything come to mind?
Man, I mean, it doesn't have to be people from this season because like Ozzy wasn't on here.
Not necessarily.
Okay. I mean, first and foremost for me, I know he won, but I need Tony back as soon as possible. Tony, I don't know if there's anyone who is even honestly on the level of Tony as far as who can compete with him. Maybe if we see someone go on to like dominate this post merge, we could then get a Tony versus X season. I think, Spencer and Joe, maybe right. Steven versus Joe, Steven and Jeremy, if they end up coming up just short. I could see this going a lot of different ways. Yeah. What do you guys think? I mean, maybe not. Let's not even limit it to males. Like Wentworth and Sierra, I think could be really compelling people to bring back for that kind of format.
Yeah, I was thinking, what about Tyson versus Tony?
Ooh, I like that. That would be really
Tyson
fun.
Versus Tony, that would be very interesting. I think Spencer versus Tony, if Spencer were to win this season, I think would be great because we'd have the 2 winners. They were from the same season. Tony was like, look, Spencer, I know what you're doing. I got all this thing going on. I'm better than you. I have all these fireside chats with you, all that kind of stuff. I think that would be great. So Spencer versus Tony would be a fun one. I think that Tasha versus Cass would be amazing.
Well, I like what somebody said in the chat. Spencer versus Tasha versus Cass.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Edward Morris had that. Cool. I think that
would be really good.
That would be a great one. Yeah. So all those guys going head to head, I think that would be great. All 3 of them. But yeah, that would be, I mean, I don't know if I really necessarily want to see that format of a season again, but at the same time, South Pacific was good. I mean, I don't think it's a lot of people remember it in the greatest of lights, but I do think that you can make a season like that work. And I think maybe, in Philippines, right? I think where we had 3 people, I think maybe that's the key is getting 3 returnees and putting them all on the same tribe together. Do you think that might have something to do with it, Colin?
Oh, it put 3 returnees on one tribe together.
Not one tribe together. Sorry, 3 returnees on. I said that wrong. 3 returnees on 3 separate tribes is what I meant. So Survivor Philippines.
Yeah, regardless of whether or not the tribes are air quotes led by returnees, 3 tribes just works. 3 tribes is going to work virtually, a huge percentage of the time. Certainly compared to 2 tribes. I think absolutely. If you put a returnee in each of those 3 tribes, I think it is a total recipe for success. I think, you could do that you can rinse and repeat that formula until Survivor, until Jeff Probst is 80 years old.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's bound to happen that we're going to get a season like that with 2 returnees or 3 returnees because, I mean, we have so many people on the poll that are Spencer's only like 22. So, I mean, obviously, if he doesn't win, he's going to come back. Joe's like 25, 26. If he doesn't win, he'll come back.
I don't know about that. I don't know if they're definitely. I think they may be a little over it at this point, potentially.
Yeah, and I think, and as somebody who has played one of these games, and as like somebody who's the same age as Spencer, I can tell you that if I were to go back, and first off, I'm not going to get invited to go back, but if I were to go back anytime soon, and I played it again, and then I didn't win, I would not want to go back for a 3rd time for a while. I would want to take like a Jeff Varner-esque type of break because I think that, especially someone like Spencer, I mean, he just graduated college. I mean, he's just started a new career. I don't think he would want to screw that up. And I think he kind of wants to just focus on that probably and kind of move on from Survivor. At least that's my take on it. At least if I was in his shoes, I know that's my kind of feelings on the whole situation. So yeah, I don't know if that's a lock. I think we could see it, but I don't think we can necessarily say, oh yeah, 100%, we're going to see Spencer go back for sure, no matter what, after this season if he doesn't win. And same with Joe. I'm not.
What about I don't know if Malcolm's ever wanted to do these again. What about Spencer versus Malcolm?
Spencer versus Malcolm. That would be something else. Taryn, what would you think about that?
I feel like Reddit would hate that, right? That would be Reddit's worst nightmare.
You can throw Joe in there and really take your pick for any 2 of the 3.
Yes. Yeah, well, yeah. Jessica Frey just said in the chat, Spencer versus Malcolm versus Joe. I think that one would be that would be an interesting one.
Too much dreaminess. I don't know if I can handle all that.
Yeah, I don't know. Savage's daughters. I think they'd be quite excited about that season.
Speaking of
Put
Varner,
his
though,
daughters on one of their tribes and then put Savage on the other tribe. Just let us stew about what his daughters are doing on the other tribes.
Savage's life would not be perfect anymore.
Oh man, that'd be so good. That'd be hilarious. Oh, okay, Taryn, you were gonna say something there.
Oh, speaking of Varner, I feel like Varner is somebody I want to see back again.
Wait. Varner or Werner, Taryn? Is it Werner?
Werner, that's an author. Werner.
Werner. Oh, okay. If you listen to the Survivor recap podcast with Marty Piombo, you'll understand that. But yeah, Werner is someone that I would want to see again too. I think that he'd be. I think everybody wants to see Jeff Varner.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was on the show for what, 4 episodes, and he just was. He was the show. Yeah. I mean, really, for a month.
Put him on a tribe that can win something, and hopefully we see some more of it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Would he be screwed though, just after playing so fast and loose this time?
Well, I think he might be, right? Because I feel like if I'm out there, I think that I'm always afraid of Jeff Varner.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea and the only way to neutralize that is to take him out. So, and I think that anybody who's going to have seen this season is going to probably feel the same way. So, yeah, I think maybe if Jeff Varner if it was one of these all returnees, or not all returnee seasons, if it was a 3-person returnee season where there was 3 random tribes, I think maybe that would help him. But again, he'd have to end up in a spot where he has a tribe that wins a lot, because I think if he's to lose, then he'd probably be in a little bit of trouble early on. But Andrew, thank you for the question.
One more idea before I go about new people. Rodney versus Mike or something like that.
Rodney versus Mike, that would be good.
I'd love Rodney back. Yeah.
Rodney.
He's gonna be back. I have a good feeling.
I'd also want Mama C back. I think she needs to come back quickly.
Yeah, she got robbed.
Mama C would be an interesting one.
Rodney would also be a good foil to Tony, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, Rodney and Tony together would be something else. Oh my gosh, Boston versus Jersey. I mean, that would be. One can dream. I don't know if we'll see that, but that would be a fun
Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, Andrew. Appreciate the question.
Catch you guys.
All right, take care. Yep, see you later. Okay, so there's Andrew.
Speaking of Varner, the idea of third time's the charm. I think what better way to do that than to split them into 3 tribes and get Varner on one of them, get PG on one, or some other person from this Vetus, Shireen, someone like that.
Yeah, I think that could certainly work, and I think that if they're going with third time's the charm, exactly, is the theme, then I mean that would be a fun one to watch. Taryn, would you be down with that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, so I've got Rodney, I've got Tony, and now Tyson. Put them on 3 different tribes. I feel
like Rodney's a little outclassed there.
He's outclassed, but personality-wise, I feel like he's got something. And I feel like he has the edge because he's the one that people are going to expect less from.
Yeah, I guess we could. I mean, it would be interesting. I would like to see you let Rodney play again to give him a chance to learn a little bit more.
Well, yeah, it has to be his third time.
He definitely has the edge over Tony and Tyson.
Yeah, for sure. Josh Musto 123 in the chat says Tony versus Russell, battle for the greatest of all time. I think that would be a good season too. Although I don't know if Russell Hantz will be on our TV screens in the near future.
What do you do? Do you do something?
I don't know. I just think that Jeff said on Kelly and Michael that Russell Hantz is the worst person that has ever been on Survivor ever. So I don't know if they want to have Russell on the show. I think it would be great. I was tweeting back and forth with Russell in the summer, and he said that Flipped Off season 2 hasn't been canceled just yet. So maybe he'll be back on A&E soon. Who knows, guys? So,
I watched Flipped Off season 1. Amazing. Really, really good.
Amazing show. And I talked about it on the live feeds of Big Brother Canada 3. Sorry for keep making these references, but Russell found out and tweeted me and was like, did you actually talk about my show on your live feeds? And I was like, yeah, I talked about your show. It was good. I loved it. And nobody saw it. and the only person watching the feeds at the time, well, I'm sure there were a few people, but my dad was watching the feeds at the time, and he was like, "Oh, I knew what you were talking about. I knew what you were talking about." And no one understood. And
we did a podcast about that way back.
I remember. I listened to it. It was
crazy.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it because you guys, I think, were the only ones who really covered it. I know Rob did some preseason stuff with it, but anyway, if you guys want to check out Flipped Off, I'm sure it's on the internet.
I don't know if it is. I don't know if you
actually. Maybe yeah, maybe tweet Russell and ask if you can get it on Blu-ray.
Hey, can I quickly run to the bathroom? Is that cool?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Right here. Sorry.
Go to the bathroom. So Colin is going to go run to the bathroom. We don't have the Spice an Hour pee break song, unfortunately. But Taryn's here with me, so we'll hang out here. We'll take some more of your questions. So if you guys want to hop on, there is an open seat as well. And we have another question here. This one comes from Jessica Frey, and this one is from her. She says, "Is Kelly pulling a Danny from Guatemala?" So, Taryn, what do you think about that? Do you think that she's just withholding information from production because she's scared that they're going to go and tell people, or do you think this is just we're kind of getting this from Kelly Wigglesworth? I did see a few secret scenes from her where it seems like she's showing a little bit more than what they're showing on the show, but it's hard to just get a lot based off of what we're getting from the show in just one secret scene every week.
Yeah, my answer to that question is no.
Okay.
I don't see it at all. We saw what we got from her in the preseason interviews. Some people had some conspiracy theories. I don't think they're panning out. Yeah. What we see is what we get.
Yeah, and Wes Sutton in the chat, he says, we eventually have to let the dream of Wigglesworth being strategic die. And I think that, unfortunately, that's what we're going to get. If you want to love Kelly Wigglesworth for just being Kelly Wigglesworth, great. I think she's an awesome lady. She's a neat lady, if you might say that. But strategically, I don't know if she's really going to bring too much to us the rest of the season. Colin, I imagine you can see the question here. Is Kelly pulling a Danny from Guatemala? I imagine you probably disagree with on that.
Where's my taboo buzzer?
No, definitely not. So I don't have the Rob as a podcast app handy for me to play that buzz sound for you guys. But I think the three of us are in the same boat on that one there. Let me jump to here's a good one. This one comes from @Josh Musto123, and he says, "Was this the best episode of Survivor since Survivor Cagayan?" And I'll add a little thing to that and to say, Colin, if not, then what is the best episode of Survivor since Survivor Cagayan that you can think of?
Okay, I mean, the best episode since Survivor Cagayan did not happen in Survivor 29 or Survivor 30. My only question is, did it happen earlier this season? And just kind of scrolling through them, honestly, there are a couple from this season that I might even put before this. I thought this was a really good premiere. I thought the Shireen vote was really unexpected and exciting. The PG vote was, that was all over the place. I might honestly say there would be like 2 or 3 from this season that I would put above it. But yeah, it's certainly a really good episode.
Okay, Taryn, what about you?
I think it probably is, and I will say this is by far the episode. I heard people at work talking about Survivor for the first time ever.
Wow.
By the water cooler?
Exactly. Basically, like separate groups of people too. And
really? Wow.
Excited about the Savage boot. They were so happy to see him gone. They were like, "Oh, we really hope the 3 girls can pull it out." You never know what can happen in the future. My mom was texting me about it. She was like, "Oh man, did you watch? It was so crazy." Like, I feel like this is a big, at least from what my perspective, this was a big moment for the casual fans. And I think this is probably the biggest episode we've seen in a really long time.
Yeah.
To me, it just felt tipped, right? Sorry, Jordan.
No, go ahead.
It just felt like we see in the previously on Kelly Wentworth finding her idol again. Later on, Sierra says, "Oh, I need a miracle." Kelly brings up at least once, maybe twice, just apropos of nothing. "Well, I do have my idol." And then at Tribal Council, they zoom in right on her bag where the idol is sitting. Like, to me, a big reason was I really saw it coming. I think without question, if this was like given to the Genius editors, this would easily be the best episode since Cagayan. Yeah, we wouldn't have known that she had the idol yet if this was given to the Genius editors.
Yeah, I'm actually with you because as soon as it seemed like Kelly was going to play the idol, I immediately tweeted like, so obviously it's not going to be Steven anymore, because why would they vote out Steven? It's got to be someone like Savage or Jeremy.
Yeah.
That being said, there were a lot of people predicting, in quotes, that Steven was going to go home this week. And so I was thinking, like, I feel like I might have gotten spoiled here, and maybe people have seen something and they think Steven's going to go. That's why so many people are so confident about it.
That's why he tweeted that after the episode. That makes so much. I thought he was just tweeting that the boot. I didn't realize he was the one who was spoiled to be booted.
Right. And so after he says that, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh.
And I think for a lot of people, even myself, who I haven't seen the boot list, I was still expecting, because so many people were predicting it, that this is probably Steven's time to go, and it doesn't happen. And so I feel like for a lot of the fan base, even the people who would otherwise be looking into the edit and see it coming, there was a lot of uncertainty regarding it. So
I would have paid money to be in a room with someone who was like spoiled, but playing it off like they knew what they were talking about, like how obvious it was that Steven was definitely leaving, like watching with their friend.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was Fuggy when he was on earlier. He said he was at the Tim Hortons Alliance viewing party up in, I think it was in Toronto, and Jessica Leese and a bunch of people were saying they were certain that Steven was going home. So I imagine some of those people inadvertently had gotten spoiled somehow and thought, oh yeah, Steven's going home, and he wasn't. So I think that would have been really a fun thing to see.
Yeah, feel free to not tweet me any spoilers, by the way. Please don't.
And now that you said that, everyone's going to tweet you spoilers. Yeah. So there you go, Colin.
Please don't donate a bunch of money to me. I would definitely be the worst thing that would ever happen.
Don't donate a bunch of money to me either. Please do not donate to my Skype campaign or my reality rally campaign, I should say, to have a Skype call with me. Do not do that. But no, seriously, I had a thought and I lost it. But no, it was just back to the editing and stuff like that with previously on Survivor, and they show the Kelly Wentworth thing, and then at Tribal Council they pan to her bag. See, when I watched that the first time, Colin, I didn't notice those kinds of things, but then on the rewatch I did. So maybe I'm just when I'm first watching the episode, I just in my mind I try not to buy into that kind of stuff too much, but I certainly think that they kind of tipped that off a little bit. But interesting that Taryn's mom was talking about that and your work was talking about that, Taryn. I had people, at school that were talking about that with me this week, and that actually doesn't really happen that often. So I think that this was a really good episode. For me, I think this probably, and it's hard to say, I mean, I can't just off the top of my head, but I think this probably was the best episode since Cagayan for me. I think that there have been a lot of good episodes this season, but I think for me, this one tops it. And again, as I was saying to Colin earlier, the Ginger Ninja cried in this episode, Taryn. He was so happy with how good it was. So I think that it's proof that this is the best episode.
Yeah, I'm not going to put up a fight. I'm certainly not going to argue with people who say that it's definitely the best episode.
No. So there you go. All right, let's move on to another question here. Let's talk about this is a follow-up one. Another one from Josh, and he says, is this already a top 5 Survivor season? Can we say that at this point in time, Colin?
If it maintains this pace, yes, absolutely. It is a top 3 Survivor season. As of right now, it probably already has enough episodes for me to be easily in my top 10. Barring some like spectacular flame out or fizzle out for this endgame, which I am really just not expecting. We talked at the opening of the episode about how this felt like yet another merge episode. I feel like that could be the case over and over and over again. It's going to keep feeling like a new merge. People are going to keep hitting the ground running to start every single new round. I think my projection would be this will definitely be a top 3 season of Survivor, which for me would mean it's on the same tier as Cagayan and Heroes versus Villains. I know people have their own rankings, and other people would put like Micronesia. Some crazy people would put Borneo up there. But for me, I think it's certainly going to be on an historic pace. Yeah, it is on an historic pace, and I think it's going to get there when it's over.
Taryn, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd say it's not there yet. There's still, a long ways to go. But I'm optimistic about its chances. And, like Colin said, if it sticks to this pace, I think we're definitely in for a top 5 season.
Top 5, baby.
Yeah.
Top 5, baby. We love that.
I think it'd be easily number 1 if Tony was on this season.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing is, Wu winning that last immunity challenge instead of losing it and having like Tony would be on this season if Wu had just made the right decision and taken Cass.
But then maybe he's not a winner, right? So
well, and also too, do we think of Survivor Cagayan in such a great light if we walk away with Young Woo Huang as the winner of the season instead of Tony Vlachos? I don't think so. I think for me that would have been a huge. That would have just killed the season so much for me. I mean, it wouldn't have killed it completely in terms of like how we rank them, but I think that it would have really it would have hurt it for sure. But man, that would have been something else if Tony was on this season of Survivor. Oh my! I don't even. My brain would explode. My brain would explode.
Like Samoa, where Natalie wins over Russell. I'm sure Samoa is a much different season as history remembers it if Russell is the one who wins there. I think.
Well, I feel like, well, I think that, the fact that Russell made the final tribal council, I think at least kind of helped it a little bit. But yeah, I think for sure, at least certainly as soon as it happened, I think it would be amazing. But I don't know. It depends. I don't know where you guys have Samoa ranked. Samoa is still relatively high for me. Sure. I think that Russell, is just amazing television. Like him or not, that was, and especially just the first time seeing that, it was just incredible to watch. Tony on the season would have been a great thing, but hopefully we'll see him again. When do you guys think though? When do you think we will see Tony again, Taryn?
Oh man. I feel like we probably won't see him again until another full returnee season, right? I don't see them bringing him back as a singular entity, right? Because he's a winner. They don't usually do that. So probably not for a while, really. And didn't he just have another kid?
He did.
He still has young kids, at least.
Yeah.
He does. So it's probably a couple of years at least, unfortunately.
I would agree with that. And I think Tony, at the same time, though, is jonesing to play again. I think he definitely wants to do it at some point. I think he is obviously going to get the call whenever they do another full returnee season. I think, honestly, for Tony, the more time that passes, as is virtually always the case, the better. That is the number one thing. Like, I say this to Ian all the time. Keep declining until it's like BB 20 plus. Because you're going to keep – maybe he's not going to get the call anymore now that Steve is in the mix. But I feel like Tony is always getting the call.
Yeah, I think so. And in terms of Ian getting the call, I think he will. It's just a matter of does he want it or does he not. But another conversation for another day. But yeah, let's move into some of the patron questions from the Rob as a Podcast patron. So if you want to become a patron of Rob as a Podcast, you can learn more about that by going to robaswebsite.com/patron and find out all about that. So let's see where we want to go with this one. Okay. This one comes from Brian Gold, and he says, is Andrew Savage underrated as a great character and narrator? As Matthew Berry would say, has the hate gone too far, Colin?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was looking at my Twitter. I'm so sorry.
No. I'll throw it to Taryn then. Taryn,
sorry.
Is Andrew...
I know that. I do love Matthew Berry. I know the hate going too far. I just didn't know who you were talking about. I'm sorry.
All good, man. All good. It happens. Okay. By the way, I love that you actually copped to that and said that's what you're doing, because I feel like most people would just be like, could you repeat the question again?
My go-to move is, what do you think?
The go-to should be, oh, sorry, you cut out for a second. I missed what you said.
There you go.
I've definitely not ever done that with Rob, ever. Definitely not.
Okay, so Taryn, is Andrew Savage underrated as a great character and narrator? Has the hate gone too far?
Oh, I wish I got this question. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'll be brief and throw it to Colin. I feel like he was edited to be hated. I saw a thread on Reddit, and I've mentioned Reddit a lot, but I saw a thread on Reddit saying, like, is Savage the subtle villain of the season? Because I feel like he was. I feel like he was edited as, a kind of alpha guy from the start, and maybe you kind of liked him, maybe you kind of didn't. But definitely by the end, he was getting on people's nerves between flipping people off, calling people pieces of, blank for lying to him and all the kind of stuff he was saying. I feel like by the end of it, he was a villain, and that's what he was edited to be. And so as far as how good his character is, I think he was a good character because it got the effect that was desired from it. So I think it's right on the level.
Yeah, I think he had a big impact. Like, my sister is a casual. She just tunes in on Wednesday and never thinks about it again. But she was really excited that Savage left because she didn't like him all season. I think at first, at least I thought at first, that he was being deliberately edited, kind of like I at least was anticipating, knowing just how much Jeff Probst loves him, that they would give him a glowing hero edit. And I thought for a while they were. But I think in almost a weird way, doing that so overhandedly early on and then kind of turning on him and kind of making him look like not the golden god that he maybe came across as early on, and he does kind of have these faults, and he's kind of being mean to Steven, or what, he doesn't like the girls or whatever's going on. I feel like that made people kind of turn harder on him when they were originally thinking he was such this great guy potentially. But I think he certainly brought it completely to the season. I think he gives great confessionals. Like, say what you will about Savage as a Survivor player, and I do, because I think it's fine. Like, he is not a good player of Survivor, but the reason for that is because he's so damn confident, because he's so good at real life. And I think that's what goes forgotten, is like, there is like genuine goodness to Savage that I know I personally don't often bring up enough. And I think that lends to him not having a ton of success more often than not in the game. But I think, that also lends to why people turn on him so hard.
Yeah, I think that you nailed that one there, Colin. And even Savage himself said it this week in his exit interview with Josh Wigler. He said that a lot of the things that he did with the, flipping the bird and saying to Joe, I swear on my kids' lives that I'm just never gonna, I'm never gonna write your name down. He just said he can't help himself. So he essentially admitted himself that, yeah, he's not the best Survivor player, but yeah, in terms of a narrator, in terms of having him on the show, I think it's valuable, because now that Savage is gone, people like your sister, Colin, people like me, people like Taryn's mom, we don't have somebody to root against. Who is the villain right now? Because I don't know. I honestly don't know who it is.
Well, Abby's been quiet. She'll probably reemerge.
But can she be a villain if she has no power?
True.
Right?
I'm a little bit afraid that what if Steven becomes a villain? Because as far as my mom goes, she's rooting for anyone that's against Joe. So yeah, she's rooting. Yeah, so I don't know. Who knows what it is? Some people in the chat saying Tasha is the villain. I don't know who Tasha's going to be. Jeremy, but I think Jeremy's too likable, I feel like, to be the villain, isn't he? I mean, maybe it's just because I love Jeremy, because he tweets me he tweeted me several times last week. But I don't know. I think
that's why I'm so high on Jeremy, though, is because it seems like during San Juan del Sur, they had an easy time making him not look dumb or look villainous, but along those lines, right? They had an easy time kind of clowning on him to a certain extent, I would say.
I don't know if they had an easy time, but
yeah, to me, I felt like Jeremy was getting that winner's edit a little bit. I felt like Jeremy was the hero of that season. I think like he was the guy. I mean, there's a lot of times there's like, oh, these guys are so dumb and like all that stuff. But
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The negativity is, I guess, what I'm talking about. And we're not getting any of that.
The negativity, but I think the negativity with him was towards your Drew Christies of the world, right? And him asking to trade the Flint back and get the like just that all that stupid stuff. I mean, so I don't know, but it will be fun to see if a villain does emerge out of this. But I don't necessarily think we need one in order to have a great season. I do think if we're talking about those seasons that were in your upper tier, Colin, of Survivor Cagayan and Survivor Heroes versus Villains, I think a big reason why those seasons were so great was because we had a great villain or anti-hero in both of those. We had Russell and we had Tony Vlachos. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but it should be it's exciting. It's great because there's so much uncertainty moving forward, and there's a lot of different directions in which this thing can go. One interesting point that a few people brought up to me. I had a few people tweet me this, and I have this question here, but this question was first, so I'm going to read this one. It comes from Renee Lucas, and she says, instead of throwing the votes onto Savage at Tribal Council, likely only ensuring a few more days, would a better plan for the three Amigas have been to split the votes and have one vote go to Savage and the other go to Jeremy, and then maybe, let's say, one go to Tasha, one go to Wentworth or something like that, and then forcing a tie, essentially making every single one of that big whole group of 9 eat itself and turn on each other, causing chaos and creating pandemonium amongst them. Do you think that would have been a better move and more effective than what ultimately happened?
This is really, really interesting because this is something when that episode aired with the three amigos where Malcolm played the double idols, we did a 3.5 hour podcast that week because we spent 65 minutes talking just about this, about what Malcolm could do with those two idols. And this was this was like our favorite idea that we came up with, was split the votes. He idols Eddie the first time and casts his own vote for Eddie to negate his own vote. And then also they can split their votes between Cochran, Andrea, and Dawn. And as this question is suggesting, make everyone kind of declare who out of the power players they're not that into. The big concern is, obviously, this is very risky. Like, one vote being slightly off could swing it completely. And I think when you're in the position that you know, and that, again, this isn't a position where they even know. Like, they don't know that Kelly Wentworth has an idol or that she's going to play it on herself correctly. Right. Which huge. They would need to do to even make this possible. But if they even hypothetically did know, I still think there's just a ton of risk, and you're in a position when you do know that you can take out whoever you want. So why not just take out the most beneficial person to you as a group? And I think with the decision that would come down to is, by removing which person do we increase the chances that someone flips over to us next round?
And that probably Savage likely
is definitely high on the list. Yeah,
the highest on the list. Taryn, what do you think about that? Do you think maybe it's getting a little too fancy doing that move?
I think it depends, like Colin was saying, on how effective you think you will be at flipping people to your side in the next round. They have 3 people to flip over. I think that's a pretty arduous task. But I think it's really risky because only having one vote on each person, they don't know for sure that the vote is not going to be split. That said, it's been, I don't know, on Twitter or something, Joe was the one that told, I think Sierra, that the vote was going to be on Kelly, and Sierra told Kelly. I don't know if he said all the votes are going to Kelly or if he said that if it was going to be a split. If they knew with relative certainty that it wasn't going to be split, then maybe this has a chance. But even then, how do you know Joe's not lying to you? How do you know he's not just saying that in order to flush out a potential idol, and then the votes are still going to be split? So, it's definitely an option. And if you really think you're dead in the water and this alliance on the other side is really solid, then go for it. There's no downside necessarily. But if you think, maybe I can get rid of Savage, and maybe with Savage gone, I could pull some people to my side because he was the one that was, holding the levies, stopping everyone from coming over. Then this is the right way to go. Make sure Savage goes.
Yeah, I think maybe I think in terms of TV, that would be incredible if we were to see something like that happen. But in terms of if you're there in the moment and you're playing the game, I think that realistically, I think hey, let's just vote for Savage. I think that probably makes the most sense because it still accomplishes what you likely want to accomplish anyway. And I feel like if they did that, Savage probably would still go home regardless. So, I don't know. Would have been fun to see it, but yeah, that's something.
It depends probably on who they split it between. Yeah, exactly. But Savage has got to be the idea when he's such a centerpiece for the Bion Strong cause. And he's clearly just not mentally flexible enough to entertain flipping over to you next round. There's no, Savage looks like the guy on all cards to be taking out.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's take another one here. This one's from Ryan Oakley. And he says, I'm curious what you guys think of the concept of being idled out, because it seems to be some of the biggest variance we ever see in Survivor. Sure, you can avoid presenting yourself as the leader to avoid being targeted. Savage, Philip, and Caramoan, for example. But that certainly didn't work for Kelly in Worlds Apart or Kelly in Samoa. Besides splitting votes, is there anything you can do strategically to avoid the vote rebound in terms of getting idled out? What do you think about that, Colin?
It's really tough because it's not like we see situations where people, whatever the majority alliance is always voting for the biggest threat out of the minority alliance. And the minority alliance is always voting for the biggest threat just in case they can idle out from the biggest alliance, from the majority alliance. Like, it's just not always going to be the case. Like, you get these leveling wars, particularly when idols are involved. Like, the greatest example probably is the South Pacific merge. Did I freeze, by the way? Okay. Yeah, there you are. Is the South Pacific merge where both teams have an idol. They don't know at that point that Cochran's going to flip, and they're not necessarily just going to put their votes on the biggest threat, and they're not necessarily just going to idle their own biggest, the most valuable person from their own side. So I don't know. I feel like there's just so many different variables that go into what level people are on regarding who they're going to be voting for when they think idols are in play, that as usual, the best plan is just be on good terms with people.
Yeah, I think idols are the most big brother aspect of Survivor that there is, because somebody on the bottom can have the idol and take somebody out from a majority alliance. And so the counteractive strategy in Big Brother is you have, like Colin said, you have to make sure you're good with everyone. At least on some level, they have to feel like, well, maybe if circumstances were different, I could work with this person in the future. And I think we clearly saw that Jeremy felt confident that he had that with enough people that he didn't need to play his idol when Kelly did. Whereas Savage, who, you know, doesn't care about the people who are not in his alliance, you know, he found out what happens when you do that. So in general, I think the most that you can do is just make sure that you have a buffer, that there's somebody else in front of you that's going to be a tastier target, and that you have a relationship with everybody to the extent that they feel like, well, why would I take this person out when I could take somebody else out instead?
Yeah, I think that's a very underrated point in general, is not always needing to come across like, hey, we're close allies right now, but just leave the door open for if things shake up, this person would definitely be down to work with me down the line. And I think Steven is great at presenting that kind of image. I think Andy Herron was really good with that kind of image where he's not committing fully. We like each other, and maybe down the line. And then whoever's left with him at the end, hey, we've got these great bonds. We talked about this down the line. Yeah. I think he's someone who's really executed on that well. And I think that's a really fundamental piece of Survivor. Like, I don't feel like it's always got to be we're locked in for the finals.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, and really at the core of that is it just comes down to the relationships that you have with people. And if you check in with people, you know, on a regular basis, if you're talking with these people, if you get to know them on a personal level, I really think that that's a huge thing in terms of getting people to be flexible in terms of wanting to work with you and for feeling good about you in the game and not wanting to get rid of you in that type of situation and establishing trust. So, but yeah, a lot of times, honestly though, I think it just kind of comes down to luck. I think that someone like Kelly and Worlds Apart, I mean, that's just like, there wasn't really much you could have done there. Kelly and Samoa, same thing. It's like, is there anything you can really do there? No. So, but that's the thing is Survivor there. It's not, I wouldn't say it's as luck based as Big Brother, but there certainly is luck involved. There certainly are twists and things that you can't always avoid. And I think that is definitely one of them. Okay, here's one from the great Mike Bloom. And he wants to know, guys, okay, ding, marry, kill. And he listed 4 things here. So I don't know if we should take one. I think I'll take one out and we'll just go with, so we'll take one out. So we'll ding, marry, kill. Kelly Wentworth playing the idol, Natalie playing the idol, or Amanda playing the idol. Taryn.
Oh, man. You know, I often have prepared answers when you go to somebody else first.
I'll go.
Okay, Colin. We'll take it. Colin's got it.
I feel like the epicness of Amanda and her idol was not how she played it, but how she got away with keeping it that she had it without them understanding. I think that is but I think that's a different kind of question. I think Alexis is just kind of underwhelming, so I'd probably kill that one. Okay. I would probably marry the one where you're negating 9 votes and taking out whoever you want. Although I do think there is a ton of merit. Natalie Anderson, obviously with one of the greatest idol plays too. I think she's got to be in consideration, like we were talking about way, way long ago, for the greatest idol plays as well. So I would go, I guess I'm marrying, as usual, Kelly Wentworth. I'm dinging Natalie and I'm killing Amanda. Make of that what you will. Taryn, what do you think now that you've had time to come up with a carefully crafted answer?
Yeah, I think I agree with that, actually. I feel like Wentworth this is kind of a straightforward idol play. It's nice and solid. It's reliable. That's the one you want to marry. Natalie's was a lot flashier. You know, that's the ding. And then
that's sexy.
Exactly. Yeah. I do want to, I did like for her play of it, but more for the editing of it, which was, you know, kind of, as far as I know, forced. They had to do that because they didn't have footage otherwise. And I wish we would see more of that stuff. But in general, if we're just looking at the game, you know, she played it and she saved herself. You know, that's how it goes.
Yeah, she went from second to second.
Exactly.
From second to second. Okay. Let's see. Let's take another question here. Then this one's just directly for Colin. So, Taryn, if you want to go find your cat and bring him into the blab again, you're more than welcome to. Well, Colin answers this one. But Colin, this one comes from Greg Kraftchick. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. Sorry, Greg. He says, if you had to categorize your podcast from RHAP, how would you do that? I religiously listen to both, and even I can't figure it out.
Interesting. Like, if I had to compare and contrast.
Yeah, I guess. Like, what is the similarities and the differences between your show and RHAP, and maybe just delve into that a little bit. And This is a good thing, I think, to do for people who don't listen to your show, so they kind of get an idea of what to expect with your podcast with Dom.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's tough, first of all, because Rob obviously is, first of all, on a whole different level than we ever will be on. And also because, at least for Survivor, he does the know-it-alls, he does the exit interview, and he does the long podcast. He does that why so-and-so got voted out. I think we are certainly most like Survivor know-it-alls, where it's just the two of us talking back and forth, unless we have a guest, talking back and forth and debating about the strategy and who's getting the winner edit and stuff like that. I think we're a little more blunt. We aren't nearly as safe for work, if that's a concern for anyone. I don't know if that's a great job selling it, but that's certainly just the reality of it. I don't know. I mean, I'd honestly be interested. I have a hard time, honestly, even talking about the differences between what I do and what Rob does and all that I hear there, because I don't really think about it in those terms. But I mean, I guess for you guys, what are the differences?
I think, Taryn, let's throw it to you.
Rob is good and we're bad, but apart from that,
I'd kind of classify it as Rob. You have a podcast that focuses on strategy, and you talk about things in great detail, the edit, different players' moves, stuff like that. And there are other podcasts who, Big Brother or Survivor podcasts, who just talk about the drama and the characters and stuff. And I feel like Rob is kind of right in the middle, where he talks about the entertainment value, the character value. He does a lot of, joking around and stuff. And he also talks about strategy. So I feel like you're kind of more focused on strategy, and you go into more detail than Rob does. But he goes into more detail about the entertaining character related stuff.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing, is if you're more interested in the strategy, the game, and analyzing it that way, not necessarily the TV show and the character development, that sort of thing, then I think what Dom and Colin do, I think, is probably something that would certainly be of interest to you, and you should definitely check it out. It's really, I really enjoy it. I mean, again, I mentioned earlier, like, it's something that I listened to a lot before I went on reality TV, and I thought it would help me a lot, but unfortunately it did not. Dude, I'm sorry. I think it's great. You should definitely check it out. It's a great show, and there's tons of cool stuff in there, and they do coverage of the Genius. So if you've seen that show and you want to hear some about that, Rob does not cover it. So that's something that Dom and Colin do, which is really cool. But in terms of, sorry, go ahead, Taryn.
Something I think that you guys, you and Dom do really well is, even if you do listen to Rob's podcast, you can still listen to Dom and Colin, and they will often bring stuff up strategic situations or different ways that the game could be played that you haven't thought of before. I think they discuss things that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise, and you think, well, okay, well, let me think of that situation, and they talk it out in detail. How would I do this? How would I go about doing this? What is the efficacy of this move going forward in the game? And so, I constantly listen to both RHAP and Dom and Colin. I get different things from them, and I wouldn't want to go without them any week.
I appreciate that.
Thanks, guys. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, and if you would like a guide of like what you should listen to for your Survivor podcast, if you don't already have something set up, if you want more stuff beyond RHAP, I'd probably like have RHAP, Dom and Colin, and then like there's a few other Survivor podcasts out there, and then there's this one that I do. So go do all those other ones. If you have like 8 ones you listen to, then come to this one. But Yeah, my show is essentially, and at first when Greg sent that question, I thought he was asking me. So I wrote him back and I said, well, honestly, I can't tell you. Like, I am just like the poor man's version of Rob doing a poor man's podcast of his. And it's just bonus stuff if you want some extra listening material in your ears. If you're, I don't know, for whatever reason, if you need extra podcasts. But yeah, no, it was that he clarified. No, the question was for Colin, not for you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, there you go. So,
well, let me just close the question by saying that I have a tremendous amount of respect for everything that Rob does, and I understand that we could never compare. So,
yeah, and in fairness, I mean, I think your show is great, and I love your show, but I think that nobody, in terms of what you guys do, I think you guys are the best. But I think that in terms of a Survivor and coverage and all that stuff, I don't think anyone's topping Rob.
I mean, how could you possibly?
No, you can't. And I mean, I'm biased because I work for the guy, but I mean, like, that's how I feel. So, and I'm sure if you're listening to this, you probably feel the same way. Last question before we take a look at some tweets. This one comes from the great Ron Chan, Ron from Toronto. And Ron Chan says, hi, Jordan and Colin. What has a better chance of happening this week? Keith winning Survivor or Keith winning Mr. Survivor 2016?
I mean, the answer is Keith winning Mr. Survivor 2016 because he's never going to win Survivor. I don't see either of them happening. I think I know Spencer has vowed that he's not going to run again, so I think Steven's going to run away with it. But I would have been really, really interested to see how that went. I think Steven would have killed him anyway. But
yeah, yeah, that would have been interesting. I feel like it would have been cool to see if Steven doesn't run and if Spencer doesn't run, because even then I think with Joe, with Jeremy, I'm sure Rodney would run. I think
I don't know how much we should be counting on Joe here participating.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just going to put that out there early.
Colin, Malcolm ran for Mr. Survivor. So if Malcolm is doing it, I mean you never know.
He really nailed it.
Malcolm's a lot more into, the show and the podcast.
Yeah, that's true. I guess Malcolm running I guess like Joe running would be like if Ozzy ran for Mr.
Right.
Exactly.
If Joe ran and won, Malcolm would no longer be the most slack Mr. Survivor.
So then maybe Malcolm will try and convince him to do it. I think that would be an interesting thing. Taryn, I just heard Taryn's cat meow. That's a good sound clip. Taryn, are you in agreement with us? Do you think Keith's pretty much drawing dead at this point, right?
Yeah, in both situations, I'd actually say he probably has a better chance of winning Survivor just because anybody has a base level chance that's probably not 0, and I feel like he has 0 chance of winning Mr. Survivor. So
right,
it's still like less than 1% for both of them.
There we go. Okay. All right. So let's hop into some tweets that I dug up a little bit here. So in this one, I'm actually stealing these from the Rob Has a Podcast patron Facebook group. So a bunch of people were talking about how there was no tweet segment this week. So I thought, hey, why don't I just steal all of these because people are tweeting them or posting them in here for me to talk about with you guys. So this first one comes from John Carroll on Twitter at First Survivor John, and he says on the next episode,
vote me back into Survivor so I can play again.
Yeah, those are this is tweet number. This is one tweet out of 100 that is not that, Colin. But here, this one does not involve any hashtags of bring back John and Nalia or anything of that sort. But in all seriousness, I do hope John Carroll does work because I would love to see John Carroll back on the show someday. But this tweet here from John is on the next episode of Survivor, How to Get Away with Murder. Or sorry, I already screwed it up. On the next episode of How to Get Away with Murder, Annalise is gonna have her hands full getting at Kelly Wentworth off the hook. So there you go. I don't know if you guys
for all the Shondaland fans out there.
So there you go. There's John Carroll with that one. This one is from Stephen Fishback. He had somebody tweet him. He had a fan tweet him saying, "Were you flattered when Sierra said you were one of the 5 people running the game?" Stephen said, "I was." Sierra said, "Either Stephen or Joe." I turned to at Anglim21 and said, "I hope it's me." So there you go.
That's a good response.
Yeah. There you go. So there's Stephen. Here's one from Richard Hatch. And Richard Hatch says, "Jeff going on and on about Joe's balls. Yikes. So
yikes is a lot tamer than I was expecting that tweet to end.
Yeah, me too. I think that one would have been pretty funny. Here's one from Andrew Savage, or not Andrew Savage. I don't know why it involves Andrew Savage. This one's from Jeff Varner, and Jeff Varner tweets at E Orleans. He says hashtag FYAS is everywhere tonight. So there you go. There, Jeff Varner on the hashtag FYAS bandwagon. How happy do you guys think Eliza was after Savage got voted out?
Yeah, Eliza and I don't often see eye to eye, from what I've gathered, to put it mildly. But I certainly, I was happy for her. I'm sure that's got to be a great feeling. Hashtag FYAS, certainly taking Survivor Twitter by storm. I wonder if it's going to keep going. Like when he's on the jury, are we going to keep getting it, or is the time over?
I think he's been humbled. I think people are going to lay off the gas.
Yeah, I think so, but I don't know. Maybe I could see Eliza saying we could get a pan. They could pan to Savage on the jury, and I could see Eliza just randomly just throwing out a hashtag FYAS. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's something Eliza might do.
I'm sure Eliza's going to keep doing it.
yeah, Eliza will keep doing it. I don't know if the mass majority of people are going to be rolling with that one. Here's one tweet that I found interesting, and there's only a couple more. I didn't do enough research on this as I should have, unfortunately, but that's what you get. You're dealing with Jordan Parhar here. I think a lot of people expect that from me. This one comes from Candace Cody at Candace Cody MD on Twitter. And Candace says, was not a fan of this week's hashtag Survivor episode. At Survivor Savage was robbed and disrespected. So that's
scorching take there from Candace Cody.
What do you think about that? Because I mean, like, that's interesting. And she says in a follow-up tweet to someone else, someone said, "Did you even watch the same episode? Savage is the victim. Interesting take. I guess he was a victim of hubris." And Candace to this person says, "I thought the girls were childish and rude with his exit." So what do you think of this coming from Candace Cody, the same person who was fingering Brad Culpepper and saying "F you, Brad Culpepper," all this kind of stuff on Blood versus Water, like, and it's about Sierra Easton, who was on the same season as her. So, what do you think about that? Why do you think Candace has this take?
I would have thought they were finger buddies.
Right?
I don't know. I think this is certainly out of left field for me. I don't follow Candace on Twitter. Although first of all, let me just say, I've never understood all of the hate for Candace. I feel like that has certainly gone way too far. I think she's been fine. Is there some history there? Why is she such an Andrew Savage supporter? Is this like the one guy after the debate, like coming out for Rand Paul? Like, hey, here we are, like loud and proud, going strong.
There you go.
I saw Sierra actually responded. I don't know if you saw that, Jordan. But yeah, Sierra responded. Yeah. I don't remember what it was, but Candace said she had a crush on him, and like he was her crush for the season, so that's why she was really on board with him.
Yeah, there we go. And the chat room is going wild because I threw out an out of context, inappropriate Jeff Probst comment saying that she was fingering Brad Culpepper. She was flipping the bird to Brad Culpepper. She was throwing a middle finger to him. Come on,
you did it on purpose. You've done it like 3 times.
But yeah, Scott St. Pierre just in the chat just says fingering question mark exclamation mark. But there you go. So you guys know what I meant. Yeah, I'm taking after the great Jeff Probst.
You saw he does that on purpose. You saw that, right?
Yeah, that's another thing we should talk about is he in an interview with Dalton Ross, he said that he does that on purpose and that him and the crew always laugh about it. I was a little bit surprised by that. Were you, Colin?
I was surprised that he came out and said it. I'm not surprised. I mean, no one's that big of an idiot that they're saying it for that many years without realizing what they're doing. It's not Tobias Aloof out here hosting Survivor.
Yeah. Now you're going to erect a poll. Like,
yeah.
Not going to say that.
Yeah, it was happening with way too much frequency. I kind of thought that he was doing it on purpose, and I wasn't surprised.
Joe is gripping the shaft here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like and I don't remember when he said he started doing it on purpose, but I definitely feel like, and I feel like maybe it was Rob that kind of pushed this into his head. You know, maybe he saw all the talk about it from Rob pulling those clips.
Well, yeah, and also too, Taryn, I don't know if you guys remember, there was an interview that Rob did with Jeff Probst during Survivor Philippines, in which, and I think it was about like 40 minutes or so, and in that interview there was one part where when Jeff says to Rob point blank, he says, "Hey, like, what do you think I should do about the show? Can I improve? Like, how can I improve hosting?" And Rob says, "Well, you could throw out a few more inappropriate, out of context remarks." And then he says, and then he goes on to say, "Well, but no, otherwise you're doing a great job." And then Jeff actually questioned Rob and said, "Well, what do you mean about that? Like, what are you talking about?" And then so Rob explained the segment and all that stuff, and then Jeff was laughing and thought it was pretty funny. So yeah, maybe after that was when Jeff kind of thought, "Oh, maybe I'll start doing this a little bit more." But
that's right.
Yeah, I didn't remember that.
That's a great pull.
Yeah. So pulling out of the RHAP encyclopedia that is up here. I listened to that Jeff Probst interview a lot, so that's the only reason why I remember that one. But there you have it. So I think we might have solved the mystery here, ladies and gentlemen, on the RHAPpy Hour. Breaking news.
There we go.
All right, let's jump into something else. And this is, again, something else that I did not really prepare for, but I think I can put it together fairly decently here. And that is the Rupert tweet segment of the show. So I have got tweets here from Billy Garcia, and I have tweets from Rupert Boneham. And okay, the problem with Billy's is he's got like a million random tweets. Oh, did Billy actually tweet during the episode? I don't know if he did. That might be an issue here. Oh no, I don't think Billy did tweet during the episode. So hold on, I'm gonna have to find.
You can just read off the list of ridiculous things that Rupert tweeted this episode.
and you can make one up pretty easily, and then we can try to find the made up one.
Try to find out the made up one. Okay. Well, okay. I'm not the most creative individual, Taryn, but
okay, maybe
we'll see. Maybe I won't be able to. Okay. Let's see. Let's start here. This tweet, maybe I'll just alter one of Rupert's tweets slightly, and then we'll go with that. So, Rupert Boneham. So let's play this game. So I don't know if we want to do, so we'll do Colin. And let's do this. So I had, I think it was Andrew Brockman in the Patreon group. He said, "I don't care what you ask, Colin. I just want you to bet on something with him so he loses more money." So why don't we do a bet here? So we're going to do the Rupert tweet segment. Colin versus Taryn. I'm going to bet on Taryn. And
I'll bet on Taryn.
I'll bet on Taryn. And then Colin can bet on himself. And we'll see what happens. We don't have, I don't know. Maybe I'll buy you some. I'll buy you a lunch or a drink or something if I ever run into you, Colin.
The mere knowledge that I have bested Jordan Parhar is enough for me.
There you go. Okay, so here we go. Let's go with the Rupert tweets. And I can't do the Rupert impression as good as Rob, but I will try to do this the best I can. Okay, here we go. The first tweet. "The reward hurts after 20 days on no sugar and no caffeine. #Survivor. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one here. "Part of what makes this good television are these small things you might not notice." Okay, that's number 2. "You gotta love Keith." Okay,
that's it.
That's number 3. And number 4. "Wow, I am impressed." Okay.
Oh, God.
Unspecified about what he's impressed by.
Yep, no specification. Just wow, I am.
Can I get a timestamp on that so I can roughly judge what was theoretically impressing him, or is that a violation of the? I guess that would verify that.
Yeah, the timestamp would verify if that's a real tweet. But hypothetically, if that is a real tweet, then I will tell you afterwards. So, so Taryn, I will give you. Actually, you know what? Since I bet on you, and since you're the favorite here, I'll let Colin choose first. So, Colin, which one was fake? Do you want me to reread those again for you?
Run them through quickly, yes, please.
Run them through quickly. Okay, so, and I won't do it in the voice, but I just need to make sure. The reward hurts you after 20 days on no sugar and no caffeine. Okay, that's one. Part of what makes this good television are things that you might not notice. Okay, that's number 2. You Gotta Love Keith. That's number 3. And wow, I am impressed. That is number 4. Okay, so Colin, which one is not a Rupert tweet?
I mean, upon first reading, number 3 really stood out to me as not real, but it seems like, God, that's something he would totally tweet. You gotta love Keith. Keith, if you had said like, you gotta love Joe or something, I would probably call bullshit, but Keith, and it would obviously refer to one scene very specifically.
Right.
I'm going to go with number 3.
You're going to go with number 3. Okay.
I'm going with Keith.
You're going with Keith.
I don't know if Rupert's a Keith guy. I don't know why I would think he wouldn't be. He seems like exactly the kind of Keith guy that there would be.
Okay, Taryn.
Yeah, I was thinking number 3, but I was kind of in between 3 and 4, so I'll just go with 4 for diversity's sake.
4 for diversity. Okay, so Taryn is going with, wow, I am impressed.
I was between those two as well.
Okay, all right. So the first tweet, let's go through. I'll go with the timestamp too because this is fun. So the timestamp. So at 8:09 p.m., Rupert tweeted, "The reward hurts you after 20 days on no sugar and no caffeine." So that was a real Rupert tweet. So
that was such a classic.
There's a ding. Okay, there's a ding. Okay. I thought this one is just such a classic Rupert tweet.
I wanted this to be true so bad.
This one is such a classic Rupert tweet. Here we go. At 8:12 p.m., he says, "Part of what makes this good television are these small things that you might not notice." So there you go. That is a legit Rupert tweet.
Yeah, there was no doubt.
Okay. At 8:21 p.m., he tweeted, and this is all again on the
fuck
night of
me,
the
I'm
episode.
wrong, man.
At 8:21, he tweeted, "You gotta love Keith."
Yeah, there we go.
Nope. He's trying to not make eye contact with anyone. So that I didn't give you the full tweet. So technically, because I'm not creative, I just stole part of the tweet. And that really was not the full Rupert tweet. So Colin, you get the point, my friend, and you win. So
what a shocking twist.
So there you go. Shocking twist. You win because the last tweet of "Wow, I am impressed" was tweeted at 8:37 Eastern time, 5:37 Pacific time. So I have no idea what he was referencing. Maybe Joe and the balls. I'm not sure. But the "wow, I gotta love Keith," he elaborated on that a little bit more. So, Colin, I will give you the point. It was a little bit of a Twisto's twist version of the Rupert tweets this week, as Edward Morris is saying in the chat. So, there you go. So, Colin, congrats, you won. So, you did
so what did we bet? 500,000 Canadian dollars.
500,000 Canadian dollars, which if you convert to American dollars now with our exchange rate is about, I think it's about like $20. So, congratulations. There
we go.
There you go. Congrats, Colin. Anybody you would like to thank for besting the Rupert tweet segment?
Well, after my performance last time on RHAPpy when I played the Rupert tweet game and completely just screwed myself over in about as gross of a way as imaginably possible, I would really just like to thank Rupert for making this easier, and Jordan, you for running such a smooth game, and Taryn, of course, for being such a sucker.
To be fair, I had the right answer. I just, who wants to see a tie?
Yeah. Well, they were. I mean,
that would have been such a dick move. Make him come up with a whole new set of them.
I was metagaming you, and I could tell when you were reading them off that there was more. Like I could see your eyes going. There was more to the tweet.
See, and that's what I was worried about. Was I was like, I need to. Well, because I was thinking as I was reading the second one, I thought, they're going to see I'm clearly reading these. So I actually need to read something that is on his page.
Yeah.
And the "Gotta Love Keith" was there. I just didn't finish the entire thing. But I should have just changed the names around. But alas, good job, Taryn. You reading the situation. But Colin wins.
Colin still beat me. I mean, I was still
the worst player wins.
But what I was going to say was I was going to ask you that if you won the Rupert tweet segment when you were on Robin's podcast, because I still have not gone back and listened to all of the Worlds Apart podcasts.
Oh, that's right, you were gone.
Yeah, and I knew you were on, and I was pumped when I saw that you did it, but I just never had the chance to go back and listen because I had
So what I got I think I got 5 tweets. 2 were Rupert, 2 were made up, and 1 was Steven or some crazy version of this game. And I totally nailed it. and then talked myself out of it, which I set it up initially saying, I'm going to talk myself out of the right answer. And then exactly that is what happened.
It's so funny. Well, you know what? Hey, it happened. It happened to me too. Well, I didn't even have it right, but I got it wrong when I was on the voicemails a couple weeks back. So it happens, Colin.
Listen, your best friend can't always have HOH and POV. They can't all be locks. They can't all be easy.
Or sometimes they can be HOH and your best friend can be HOH and POV, and then they decide not to use the POV on you.
That would never happen, Jordan.
You know, that sometimes that happens too.
It's not a realistic possibility.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Taryn, I'm just gonna do a little wrap-up thing with Colin here. So peace out. If you want to join us for the RHAPpy show, you're more than welcome. I'm sure if you want to talk with us then. But thank you for spending some time with us today.
It's been a pleasure.
Good talking to you, Taryn.
Yeah, Taryn, you take care. We'll talk to you later. Okay, Colin, thank you so much for joining me today. I had a great time. We had this felt like 20 minutes, and we've been here for well over 2 hours.
Coming up on 3. Yeah, I can't believe it.
Yeah, coming up on 3. So it's been great talking to you. It's been awesome, and it's been such a pleasure finally having you on the show. People wanting to know more about the Dom and Colin podcast, where can they check that out, and what's your plans for the next upcoming weeks? You're just gonna be doing Survivor stuff, I imagine.
Yeah, we're doing Survivor for the rest of the season. You can find all of our stuff, first of all, on domandcolin.com. We're going to keep rolling through each week with this Survivor season. Definitely planning on doing some of our long-form interviews again after the season. Really, really excited about that. It has been a long time since we've done any of those. So that should be really cool. I definitely do want to say, for the people, we've referenced it before, The Genius, I'm sure you've heard about it. It's this phenomenal South Korean reality show. You definitely should be watching it. And when you follow me on Twitter at Colin Stone, all of the seasons are available online with English subtitles. And I have those links pinned to the top of my Twitter page. And Jordan, thank you once again so much for having me. This was such a blast.
Yeah, it was great having you on, Colin. I knew you'd be an excellent guest, and I'm so happy that you agreed to do it. And it's been a blast. It's been so much fun, and I'm glad that we finally got to talk, because I know we've DM'd and stuff a little bit back and forth since I've been home, but we haven't actually talked, face to face before, if you want to call this face to face. But it's been great having you on, and I had a blast today. So thank you so much to Colin, and thank you to all you guys listening to this in the audio archives, and for those of you who stuck with us on Blab and sent us your questions today and came on and talked to us. I really appreciate that. I think that makes the show a lot more fun when it's interactive and when you guys are involved and when you guys give your feedback. So thank you so much for doing that. It's been a great time. And for those of you who are still in the chat room, we're going to I will be here for a little while after the show, at least to do the RHAPpy show, to talk to you guys and take some questions. So if you want to ask me anything like that, you're welcome to hop on and we can talk about anything. Hopefully Colin can stick around for a bit. I'm sure Taryn will come back and we can check that out. So if you're listening to this in the audio archives, definitely check that out. It's usually on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern is when we do the show, and we do that afterwards. Be on the lookout next week for my podcast. Not sure exactly the roster that I've got for the recap, but we're going to be talking Survivor once again. I have talked to the great Alec Beal of The Shield from Big Brother Canada 1. There you go. Yes, Colin throwing up the Shield sign. So Alec looks like he's going to be in for the show. I might be having 2 other guests joining him. It just depends on some scheduling stuff. So stay tuned to that. It might be just Alec, or it might be a mishmash of some Big Brother Canada people. I'm working on that right now. So stay tuned. Just keep it locked to my Twitter, and I will let you know what's going on with that. I am at Jordan Parhar if you do not follow me already. Okay, so Colin, we need a hashtag for this episode of the podcast. I think maybe something with fingering, because I brought that up. I don't know.
What did I call them? Fingering buddies or whatever?
No, so some people are saying it's hashtag fingering Brad is what
sounds good
in the chat. Although fingering I don't. Do we really want that hashtag there? Because I think that might not be so good on Twitter.
I don't know what Rob would say about that.
Yeah, and I've gotten in trouble in the past for cursing and things like that, or maybe not me cursing, but having guests curse and stuff on the show. So that might not be so good. Wes Sutton saying at hashtag Fing Culpepper. Let's see, Terrence. I feel like people looking up the hashtag fingering Brad will not have an enjoyable experience. Yeah, I agree. Maybe
anyone in the chat got anything good? Sorry,
Yeah,
I totally. You'll hear if you ever go back and listen to me with Rob. I totally dropped the ball on this portion of the podcast with him too. I had no hashtags ready.
Let's see. Hashtag FYBC. Oh, that's not bad. Hashtag Keith for Mr. Survivor. Hashtag Candace Finger. That one might be okay, right?
All right,
Candace,
let's do it. I think that one is right on the line of arguably appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's okay. And let me just see. We want to get the right spelling of Candace Cody. So it's Candace. So CAINDICE. So hashtag
with an I, not an A.
Yeah, with an I, not an A, spelling it not the same way that Candace from Big Brother 15 spells it. So let's do that. So hashtag Candace Finger is going to be the hashtag for this episode.
I don't see what's possibly wrong with that.
So. I don't either. So we'll see. Maybe it'll lead to some bad things. But you know what? We'll see what happens.
If they do, they're not going to happen to me. So no, I'm okay with it.
No, exactly. Not happening to Colin. So it's all going to be on me, and it's going to be great. And if you think bad things happen to me a lot, so it's okay. I'm used to it. And if that happens, so be it. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. RHAPiswebsite.com/RHAPpy Hour. That's happy hour with an R at the front. And subscribe to Reality TV RHAP-ups on YouTube and on iTunes as well. You can get this show on iTunes along with coverage of Are You the One? We talked about a little bit of the challenge. There's a podcast about that on there. Amy and Haley are going to be back soon covering The Bachelor. So lots of great podcasts on there. Make sure you check out that. But guys, thank you so much. We'll see you next week, next Saturday, live on Blab. It should be a great show. We had a great time today and can't wait to do it again. For Colin Stone, I'm Jordan Parhar. Hashtag Candace Finger. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Peace out.